Secretary, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Today is Monday, February 2nd, 2015, and this is a City Planning Commission review session. A quorum is present. First item on the agenda is the proposed Urban Development Action Area Project designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, and a zoning map amendment to facilitate approximately 179 units of affordable housing. Our presenter is Beverly Jimenez from the Manhattan office. Item number 1.
Good afternoon, Commission members, Chairman Weisbrod. HPD is requesting UDAP designation and project approval, the disposition of city-owned property, and a zoning map amendment for a site located on the east side of First Avenue and 120th Street. The site is currently located within an R72 zoning district. The requested zoning map amendment would change the district to an R7X with a C15 commercial overlay along First Avenue. If approved, these discretionary actions would facilitate the development of a 12-story mixed-use building with 179 units of affordable housing, 5,450 square feet of ground floor retail space, 3,970 square feet of community facility space, 27 at-grade parking spaces, which would be partially decked over to provide 9,410 square feet of private open space. Currently on site along First Avenue is a 75 space surface parking lot along First Avenue and a one-story wing that was used previously by the East Harlem Multi-Service Center. The one-story building is actually a wing of the 5-story building that is behind it. Both the one-story wing and the 5-story building was previously the PS 80. The 5-story building is currently used as the main building for the multi-service center. Under this proposal, the one-story wing would be demolished. It is currently vacant to make way for the proposed development. The surrounding neighborhood is the surrounding land use of the neighborhood generally reflects medium-density residential uses, mixed-use commercial buildings, and public institutions. This is the site. R72 districts permit an FAR up to 3.44 FAR. The surrounding area to the south of the site includes contextual districts, which include R7A, R7B, and R7X. The R7X The R7X C15 commercial overlay is mapped along First Avenue between East 114th Street and the south side of East 120th Street. The requested zoning map amendment would extend the R7X district 180 feet along First Avenue and 200 feet into East 120th Street. The existing R72 zoning district allows a maximum residential FAR of 3.44, a maximum commercial FAR of 2.0, a maximum community facility FAR of 6.5. The proposed R7X C15 district is a contextual one that permits a maximum residential FAR of 5, a maximum commercial FAR of 2, and a maximum community facility FAR of 5. The proposed R7X C15 district requires a building base height of 60 to 85 feet before requiring a setback of 10 feet before rising to a maximum of 125 feet. The proposed development will consist of a 12-story L-shaped building with a height of 121 feet and 4 inches and an FAR of 4.98. The building will contain 179 units of affordable housing, all of which would be affordable to individuals earning up to 60% of the AMI. For a family of 4, that would mean they would pay $1,025 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, and $1,182 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. The building distribution is 37 studio apartments, 48 one-bedroom apartments, 91 two-bedroom apartments, and 2 3-bedroom apartments. The green represents retail space. The yellow represents community facility space, and the blue represents residential space. The ground floor retail space will have 2 entrances, one on First Avenue and the other on East 120th Street. The community facility space will have 1 entrance on First Avenue. The residential building will have 1 entrance on 120th Street. Access and egress to the parking lot will be from 120th Street.
Questions? Ms. Levin?
Can't let a project of this scope go by without a few questions. Is there a user chosen yet for the community facility space?
There is not, no.
So they'll be on
To be
the...
determined. Mhm.
And also, I noticed this is kind of a unique site, and the building will essentially be freestanding, as it's got the NYCHA campus surrounding it. So my question is an urban design one, which is what the northern, and the board on our right here shows the southern and the western facades. Question is what the other 2 sides of the building will look like, as they will always be visible from the surroundings.
Would you like to see the elevation?
Do you have them? Fantastic.
This is the western elevation. First Avenue, ground floor retail, community facilities, and of course the residential is around on 120th. This is the southern elevation, 120th.
Do you have the other 2? It's the other 2 I was asking about.
Yeah.
Especially because the northern facade, you know, it's going to have the parking underneath it. Want to be sure that it has, you know, a pleasant facade treatment for the NYCHA campus to the north.
Site plan, maybe that's what we're-
Okay?
So here you see the open space, and it leaves about 250 feet outside that are not going to be left over. This is the exposed part.
Mm-hmm.
So you would come in from the back and come into the parking. There's a stairway here, and I would like to mention that. There is a stairway on 120th Street also, where you can access the second floor open space only for residents.
Wait, that's more like 121st, right?
No, this is actually, this is here.
Correct, yeah. Okay. But, so, if I live in the NYCHA buildings to the north, and I'm looking at this building, what am I going to see?
If you live in here?
Yes. Am I going to see a finished building wall, or am I going to see a blank concrete?
Just want to know that HVD is in the audience.
Okay.
We don't.
And
have
I
the
recognize
northern
that this is not exactly our issue, but I do think it's important. Maybe when it comes back, we can get a little more detail
Yeah.
about.
I'll be glad to provide
Great.
that to you.
Thank you.
Ms. Efron?
No,
Vice Chairman
no.
He didn't have his hand up. I didn't have mine.
Thank you. I have a question about service context with the NYCHA house, the NYCHA buildings around. There's a reference to social services that would be provided for the residents, and it sounds as if the participating agency hasn't been chosen yet. But is there any plan to integrate those services into the immediately adjacent
I'll have to
buildings?
ask the question.
Okay. And since you brought it up, I did have a question about the public space and whether it would be available to other groups, perhaps children in the neighborhood or others.
The open space is private space.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Knuckles.
Thank you. Beverly, it seems actually clearer on that plan than it does on the plan that we have, but just taking me through, the entrance to the parking is on 120th Street?
Yes.
And what's the dimension of that curb cut? It looks very narrow.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. There's no dimension.
So you enter and you go up along side of the residential and then into the parking, that's how it works?
Right, and it's both for access and egress, so.
Okay. So it's completely, you're underneath the residential when you're going in. It's like a,
Well, you're not underneath, it's beside it. It's going alongside of it.
yeah, because this rendering doesn't,
That's one story, I think.
The only part that is covered will be this portion of the parking area.
okay, it doesn't look like that from the southern elevation, which is 120th Street, right? That's
Yes,
the southern elevation? No, I'm good, yeah.
Ms. Ortiz.
Somewhat confused.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Beverly. Just for clarification, it's not skirting the residential, it's actually skirting ground floor community or retail space, correct? Because the residential starts at the second floor. Just for clarification, the ramp to the parking area is adjacent to commercial or community facility space for the residential, but it's not a residential unit. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Beverly? Mr. Cantor.
Hi. It's two-way. I don't know, I'll have to get that dimension for you.
Ms. Cantor.
I don't know that information right now, but I can get back to you with that.
Sorry. Okay. And the other thing you said, if I understood you, Bev, that portion is roofed over, and then the portion on the top is roofed over, and there's an open area in between that's not roofed over?
You speaking of the parking area?
Yeah.
This part will be decked over, and there's about 350 feet of it that will be exposed to the open air, will not be decked over.
And what about the portion just above that blue?
Southern elevation.
No, that, yeah.
There's a handicap space.
Is that roofed over?
That's not decked over.
It is decked over.
Oh, it is decked over, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is roofed over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Marie?
No, I was just gonna suggest if you can put up the portion where the deck over garden is, so you can compare it to this one. You have the other floor plan, the second floor, or you have the decking. No, leave that one up, please, so that you can see the both of them together.
See the entrance there, it doesn't, but it says, it looks like it's going underneath the building.
That's the southern elevation, so match this up to that.
Yeah, you see how narrow it looks? I don't know what the dimension, I don't know what scale this is, but it looks very, looks like it's about 6 feet wide, maybe.
No, this got to be the surface side.
The one with the deck. You can put them both side by side, so that this way you can get a better understanding of with the extent of the reach of the deck.
Now I gotta find it.
So basically, the building itself is a rectangular image. There's a smaller rectangle that is the portion that is not decked over.
I think there's a little confusion between what's shown on the boards and in our briefing material, where it looks like the driveways into the parking
the building.
area is covered
Yeah.
and part of the building.
It is, it's part of
But-
the facade of the building.
So that,
You
yeah.
can go in,
but Beverly, did you say that it's not covered over there?
It is, actually.
Okay.
This is the entrance right here. So it's
Yeah,
right-
so it's got to be covered.
That's the entrance.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, this is certified, this will be back to us, and in the meantime, we'll try to get answers to your questions, on, particularly on the garage and parking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. Let's now move to item number 2, page 19, proposed special use permit to facilitate residential development at 41 Great Jones Street. Our presenter is Joel Polkman of Manhattan office. We're at item number 2, page 19.
I've always wanted to know what was so big about Jones.
Yes, I always want to know, Jen. So I will accuse myself because I assume because he's in favor.
Okay. Okay.
And I assume he's here, but I didn't know he was working on it until this minute.
What is he on the team? Is he a
When is he
part
here?
of
So I should probably, I assume it's 23rd Street. I don't know.
Okay.
Because it didn't list the developer by name.
Okay, good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This application seeks approval of a special permit to facilitate the conversion of an existing commercial building into an entirely residential development at 41 Great Jones Street, located in the NoHo Historic District Extension within Manhattan Community District 2. The requested action will allow the Commission to modify the use regulations within the underlying M15B zoning district. The proposed project was approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in March 2014 and later amended in June 2014. 41 Great Jones Street is located on the south side of Great Jones Street between Bowery to the east and Lafayette Street to the west. The site sits across the street from a at-grade parking lot with space for 175 vehicles on stacker units. That parking lot is here, and the project site is this building shown here and here. The surrounding area is predominantly developed with buildings ranging in height from 2 to 11 stories and contain a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial uses. The industrial uses are mainly art-related and contain Use Group 17 joint living work quarters for artists. The neighborhood has become increasingly residential in recent years, and this block of Great Jones Street in particular contains almost entirely residential or mixed residential and commercial buildings. The project site is located in the M15B zoning district, which permits light manufacturing and commercial uses up to a maximum FAR of 5, and community facility uses up to a maximum of FAR of 6.5. Residential use is not permitted as of right, but Use Group 17 joint living work quarters for artists are permitted as of right in conversions of buildings constructed prior to 1961 and that have a lot coverage of less than 5,000 square feet. And for that provision, buildings with frontages on Broadway are limited to a lot coverage of 3,600 square feet. Also in the M15B zoning districts, Use Group 6 commercial uses and retail uses are not permitted below the level of the second story. So 41 Great Jones Street has a frontage of 27 feet along Great Jones Street and a depth of 100 feet for a total lot area of 2,700 square feet. The development site is improved with the 5-story commercial building, again shown here. It's 60 feet 5 inches tall and has approximately 11,906 zoning square feet and an FAR of 4.41. The cellar and the ground floor were occupied by non-conforming Use Group 6 art galleries, an art gallery use, which according to the applicant was not in compliance with the lease for those floors, which was for Use Group 9 art studio use, and that is permitted within the M15B zoning district. Department of City Planning staff notified Department of Buildings of this potential non-conforming condition, and DOB subsequently issued a violation. The lease for the ground floor and the cellar expired on January 31st, and they are now vacant. Floors 2 through 5 of the development contain Use Group 6 commercial office uses. The second, fourth, and fifth floors are currently occupied with leases expiring February 28th, and the third floor was occupied until the end of '24, and it is now currently vacant. So the proposed development will convert the existing 5-story building from a use group 6 commercial building to a use group 2 residential building. The proposed development will be 73 feet and 6 inches in height, and it will comply with the height and setback regulations of the M15B zoning district, which allow for a maximum front wall of 85 feet or 6 stories, whichever is less. The rooftop addition, which you can see here, will be set back 12 feet from the front lot line and 20 feet from the rear yard line, or rear lot line. And the proposed building will total 13,500 square feet and be 5 FAR. The proposed development will contain 3 residential units. The first unit will be a triplex in the cellar, ground floor, and second floors. The second unit will be a duplex on the 3rd and 4th floors, and the third unit will be a duplex on the 5th floor and within the penthouse. So to facilitate this conversion, the applicant's requesting a special permit pursuant to zoning resolution section 74-711 to modify the use regulations of the M15B zoning district. The special permit will allow the proposed use group 2 residential use to be located throughout the building.
Questions for Joel? Hearing none. Certified.
All right,
Thank you, Joel.
thank you.
Our next item is item number 3, page 57. It's a Brooklyn pre-hearing application with respect to a proposed zoning text amendment to facilitate the continued use of an existing food store on a block within the special Sheep's Head Bay District, Area B of Brooklyn. Our presenter is Richard Jacobs of the Brooklyn office. This is item number 3, page 57.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod, Commissioners. This is a private application back for pre-hearing for a zoning text amendment to the Special Sheepshead Bay District to permit a Use Group 6A food store in Area B of the special district without a limitation on size and street frontage. The text amendment would facilitate the continued use and legalization of the Cherry Hill Gourmet Food Store. In addition, the text amendment would allow for some technical corrections to the language used to describe permitted uses in areas A through H. The project area consists of Area B of the Special Sheepshead Bay District. The Sheepshead Bay District is some 20 blocks in length along Evans Avenue, on the east bordered by Knapp Street, to the west by Sheepshead Bay Road. There are 8 sub-areas, A through H, in the special district, with regulations governing development and permitted uses for each area. The project area itself consists of Area B. It's generally bounded by the Belt Parkway on the north, Ocean Avenue to the east, Evans Avenue to the south, and East 19th Street to the west. Area B includes only 1 block and 1 corresponding zoning lot. In its entirety, the development site, Cherry Hill Gourmet Market, is a retail use located on that block and zoning lot within the landmark former Lundy's restaurant building located at 1901 Emmons Avenue in an R5C22 zoning district. Just by way of history, in 1973, the City Planning Commission established the Special Sheepshead Bay District. Area B was mapped in large part in recognition of the former thriving lodge restaurant located at the site. The use regulations of the area permit a restaurant of unlimited size and frontage, but restrict a select list of retail uses to a size limitation of 3,500 square feet and a frontage maximum of 35 feet, with food stores not a permitted use. So a restaurant is permitted of unlimited size, a food store is not a permitted use. Historically, the original Lundy's restaurant opened in 1934 until its closing in 1978, some 44 years later. Lundy's was a borough seafood favorite, not unusual for them to serve 10,000 meals on a given Sunday. In 1992, 14 years after its closing, the Spanish colonial revival-style building was designated as a New York City landmark. A smaller version of the restaurant reopened in 1995, but later closed in 2004 after several unprofitable years. With the landmarking of the building and the failure to sustain such a large restaurant, the Special Sheepshead Bay District regulations lessen the range of possible uses. Currently, the building is known as Lundy Landing Shopping Center, housing the applicant, Cherry Hill Gourmet, 2 other restaurants, offices, and vacant commercial space. Cherry Hill opened in 2008 as a food store and restaurant. The current application proposes changes to the special district to allow the primary use, the food store, to become a conforming use. The Buildings Department is aware of the current non-conforming food store use, having issued and settled most prior violations. Remedy to cure the remaining use violation is to obtain a legal certificate of occupancy, which only can be obtained if the district is changed to allow a food store as a conforming use. The existing zoning lot, again, encompasses an entire block, has 43,450 square feet of lot area. The building has 50,636 square feet of floor area. The applicant occupies 20,646 square feet of that 50,000 plus square footage, with 14,230 on the ground floor, another 6,400 on the second floor, including seating for approximately 50 restaurant guests. In warmer months, a sidewalk cafe with waiter service and 100 outdoor seats is set up on both the Ocean Avenue and Emmons Avenue frontages. And there's an existing 41-space unenclosed parking lot at the rear of the building. So again, the text amendment would modify permitted uses in Area B of the special district to allow a use group 6A food store with no limitation on frontage per establishment. Proposed amendment would facilitate the continued use of the existing food store, make the food store a conforming use. Other than legalizing the existing condition, there are no plans for a proposed enlargement or any new development. Now, at this stage, I normally would present the findings of the community board and the borough president, but I have neither, and let me try to explain. The application was referred to by the City Planning Commission for 60 days back on November 3rd. At their request, the community board was granted an additional 2-week extension. Unfortunately, the anticipated blizzard last week caused them to postpone their public hearing until tomorrow evening, a day before the Planning Commission hearing. The borough president held their public hearing on January 15th, but they're withholding their recommendation until they hear from the community board. So I have neither the community board nor the borough president's recommendation prior to your hearing. On top of that, the local council member, I am Deutsch, whose district this involves, has requested delay or rescheduling the public hearing, and we're obligated to hold the hearing since we've already noticed the hearing, and we anticipate people may show up, even though the word is out, that we've extended the hearing to the following public hearing date on the 18th of February. That will give the community board and the borough president time to submit their recommendation. And also, some of the people who complained they'll be attending a community board hearing Tuesday night might not be able to make it to the morning session. So that all being said, as indicated by the borough president and at the borough president's public hearing, there's strong feelings on both sides of this application, those that are in favor of the text, those that want to preserve the special district, those that want some kind of a compromise. And so you may or may not hear testimony Wednesday, but we'll hear by the continued public hearing on February 18th. And in the interim, we'll have recommendations by the borough president and the community board. Be happy to answer any additional questions.
Mr. Cirillo.
Richard, thank you. Let me ask you a question. Was there something that we did in the last 10 years, although it says in 2004, the attempt at the restaurant closed, but then it says that in 2008, Cherry Hill opened. Was there something I have a vague recollection that we did something for the Lundys, I don't remember if it was a catering, was it something to provide for catering upstairs? Was it
There's something
the
across
parking
the
or the
street,
sidewalk cafe?
Baku Plaza, you might be thinking of,
Am I-
across the
am I
street.
Just on the wrong side of the
Separate from
block, my
Lundy's.
memory?
It's actually across the street was an application that I remember well, it was my first application with the commission. Was,
That's why I remember
It
it.
was a special permit to allow for dancing at this, as
Right.
a Johnny's restaurant that also had a facility. And because of the restricted special permit regulations, they actually had to come get a special permit in order to have dancing with the weddings and bar mitzvahs, et cetera, that this restaurant was.
Okay.
That's probably what you're remembering, and it also is kind of another example of the very fine grained use regulations that the special use of
Okay, so that possibly, the relationship to Lundy's is maybe what I'm remembering more
Across
than.
the street,
It was
yeah.
across the street, okay. So then my question is that what ended up reopening in 2008 was partially a legal use and partially a non-conform, you know what, I don't want to use the word illegal, but did it become non-conforming, the food part of this, or was it always non-conforming
I think from the
start?
beginning, the larger part of the establishment was a food store. It did partially have a restaurant, and there were stop work orders issued and
Okay,
violations, and the applicant has settled most of those violations with the exception of the use violation,
okay,
and cannot, the remedy is either to vacate the premises or get a certificate of occupancy, and he can only do that with this text change.
okay, and not to pass judgment on the application, I'm just trying to understand the procedure. There was nothing that we had done, my question was, had we done
No.
something at some point in time that created a non-conforming use, which
No.
then created the problem? This is really,
No.
was more of a voluntary situation that is now being attempted to be corrected.
That's right. I think the
Okay.
building was vacant for a long period of time, and then it was occupied by this use,
Understood,
which,
understood. Thank you very much, thank you.
Mr. Dweck?
Thank you. I think a compromise that would work probably well for the community, and I'm sure the borough president, would be attaching a special permit, a 10-year restrictive special permit to the application. So this way, there's some kind of accountability that we can ensure the applicant is conforming with their stated commitments on restaurant usage and parking and other amenities that they've promised the community. At the same time, we won't have the building vacant, which it could go back to that state of being vacant for many years, which is not something the community, I'm sure, would want either. So what's the feeling from the agency on attaching a 10-year special permit, similar to what we did with the amphitheater in Coney Island?
Well, why don't we hold that until the hearing, and then we'll come back. I'd like to hear the testimony on all sides here. Since the likelihood is that this hearing will be continued from Wednesday to the 18th, we'll also bring this back for review session on the 16th, just in case some of your memories are as faulty as mine, so. Mr. Knuckles.
Thank you. Richard, I think we went over this when this was certified, but just tell me, this opened in '08,
yes.
in the current manifestation. So why did it take 6 years to identify that this was this occupancy was not consistent with the governing zoning regulation?
Well, I don't believe it did take 6 years. I think the Buildings Department reacted and issued appropriate violations. It wasn't until the applicant came forward to the commission, to the department with an application, that we moved this forward. And there were, for one reason or another, more than one attorney that was involved. So it wasn't until sometime last year that it was presented to us as a more complete application, and we moved it forward.
Do you know when the Buildings Department became aware of it?
Actually, I was the planner for this area
Uh-huh.
when this opened, and it was of discussion very soon upon opening of the facility. And the buildings department was engaged with the operator and the owner. From that point, the Brooklyn office was made aware of this and was part of discussions about the zoning issues from an early point, and discussed conceptually the possibility of a text change to address the use issue. But as Richard indicated, the applicant was not actually really taking steps to move this forward in a clear direction until more recently, and Richard referred to some of the circumstances.
Thank you.
Mr. Dweck.
I was just going to clarify that I think the catalyst for the application is not so much the violations from DOB or wanting to conform, but the landlord, the over-landlord, I believe the sublease, has initiated an action to evict the tenant based on the non-conforming use. So for them to comply legally, they needed to get a legal conforming use in place, which is the catalyst for this application. So it's not necessarily the buildings department or what we're doing here.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi, good morning. Just a quick clarification. So For any of the other sites within the special district, their use group 6A, which is this food use group, is restricted in all of those other sites?
in-
It seemed,
in
it said
actually-
generally limited, you know, the language wasn't quite clear.
Was not permitted in the store, but this restaurant on the liquor side. So actually, this whole area has similar regulations.
Okay, and what was the rationale, the underlying rationale for that at the time?
Well, in general, the special district sought to attract waterfront restaurants, smaller stores that had a maritime theme, which to some extent has not proven successful. In fact, now since Hurricane Sandy, there's been a lot of damage, and we're taking a harder look at the special district in general through our resilience resources. So I hope I answered your question. That was the thinking back in 1973.
Yeah. No, it's just, okay, thank you.
Ms. Levin?
Richard, do we expect anyone to show up on Wednesday, or do you think the word will have gotten out?
My expectation is that the word has gotten
Okay.
out, but we can't be certain.
Well, so I understand that we do need to hold the public hearing, and I was going to ask, maybe it's not necessary, if you can give us a preview. If any substantial number of people are going to show up, it would be useful to have a preview of what the arguments are, pro and con. But if we don't expect that much, maybe we don't need to take time on that today.
We don't really expect that many to show up.
Okay.
We ask the applicant to be prepared, testify, and to show up, but likely, depending upon who testifies or who shines up, there may or may not be testimony Wednesday at all.
Okay, so then it's not worth more airtime today.
Right, but we will do that on the 16th.
Well, of
the
course,
next
no, I
review,
was just
so-
wanting to be prepared
Right.
on Wednesday in case we're going to hear anything, but it sounds like unlikely that we can.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think
just say-
we're trying to be as careful as possible,
No,
just in case someone shows up. But
Yes, I
from
got it.
every indication, other than the applicant
Sounds like a good plan.
itself, we don't anticipate it, given the community board's inability to hear this until Tuesday night. So,
Good, thank you.
Ms. Deleuze?
So to that end, do we actually, because the hearing is going to be tomorrow night, do we believe we're going to get the recommendation from both the community board and the borough president early Wednesday morning?
I don't believe so. I think if we held to just the one hearing, we would have possibly gotten at least the community boards. It would have been difficult for the borough president to prepare that early the next day. But nonetheless, I can't be 100% certain, but certainly between now and the 18th, we'll have those recommendations submitted to you in your briefing packages, and we'll have post-hearing follow-up to discuss that and answer any questions.
Any other questions for Richard? Okay, thanks, Richard.
Item number 4, page 72, is a Queensbury hearing application with respect to a proposed zoning map amendment from R6C22 to C43 to facilitate a mixed-use building in Flushing, Queens. Queensbury hearing, item number 4, page 72, and our presenter is Haekung Yang from the Queens office. I just also want to remind the commissioners and anyone else who might be in the audience attending the hearing on Wednesday, we start at 9 a.m., and the hearing is off-site, located at the National Museum of the American Indian at 1 Bowling Green. So that's this Wednesday at 9 a.m.
Good afternoon. This is a private application back for a public hearing. CG&J Realty LLC seeks a zoning change from C6, C2-2 to a C4-3 zoning district. The proposed zoning map amendment would facilitate construction of a new mixed-use 11-story building in Flushing, Queens, Community District 7. The proposed building would contain approximately 10,000 square feet of commercial retail on the ground floor, approximately 7,000 square feet of community facility space on the second floor, about 191 hotel rooms on the 2nd through 8th floors, and approximately 43 residential dwelling units on the 9th, 10th, and 11th floors. With basement and cellar, the building would rise to a maximum height of 123 feet for a total of approximately 150,000 square feet with a maximum FAR of 4.8. The main reason for this rezoning is to allow for hotel use group on this site, as overall bulk FAR of 4.8 would be the same in the existing zoning. The project was certified on October 20th and referred out to Community Board and Borough President. The applicant and Community Board has had regular correspondence, and the applicant has complied with all the Community Board requests. The Community Board recommended approval of the application with modifications, which include traffic flow changes for the hotel drop-off and some safety measures to the entrance and exit of the parking lot. In addition, the applicant agreed to allow community groups to use the new community facility space at no cost when needed and available. The Community Board recommended approval of the application with the condition that the applicant conform to the modifications suggested by Community Board 7.
Questions? Ms. Efron?
What were the non-opposition, the votes in opposition to the amendment? And I just couldn't tell, did Town Hall come to an agreement with the applicant to use the space, or is this just preliminary?
Yes, they sent a letter to the applicants and also shared it with the Community Board saying that they've had talks with the applicant and that they're okay with them being next door and with the space.
Is that different than the October 9th letter? Because it doesn't
No.
sound, okay.
It's the same.
And-
Okay, it just sounded as if it were still in the subjunctive of the possibility
Yes.
as opposed to a confirmation.
I'll get back to you on that, but I think it was a confirmation, pretty positive. But the main reason that the 9 were opposed to the project was based on the aesthetics of the building. They preferred a more classical American colonial design, and others just opposed change.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Levin?
I had the same question as my colleague, and more specifically, the Flushing Town Hall letter identified some specific design changes they wanted to be made. And
Yes.
my question is whether, are those design changes reflected in what got certified, or are those design changes remain to be made?
No, those were changes that were made prior to the certification date. So what you saw at certification was the changes
Is
that
in
they made.
response, in part, to the
Correct.
Flushing Town Hall letter?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Hay County?
Kind of a jarring transition, isn't it? Flushing down.
Thank you, Hay County. Do we expect a number of people, any of those who voted no or those in the community who opposed to be here on Wednesday?
No, I don't believe so. I know the applicant, the architect, and the owner actually is going to be at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Let's now advance to item number 5, page 107, proposed modification to a previously approved special permit to facilitate mixed-use development at 325 West Broadway. I'd like to introduce Sylvia Lee, who's making her very first presentation before the City Planning Commission. Sylvia's the planner in the Manhattan office. We're at item number 5, page 107.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This private application by DDG WH 325 West Broadway LLC requests modification to a previously approved special permit pursuant to Section 74-711 of the zoning resolution. The project is located on a through lot between West Broadway and Worcester Street, between Canal Street and Grand Street, within Soho Cast Iron Historic District, Manhattan Community District 2. As shown on the area map, the site is split between M15A and M15B zoning district. The special permit approved by City Planning Commission on December 19, 2007, modified the use and bulk regulations to facilitate the restoration and conversion to residential use of 2 existing buildings at 23 to 25 Worcester Street and the development of a new 9-story mixed-use building at 325 to 329 West Broadway. Subsequent to the 2007 approval, the ownership of the property and the building design went through a series of changes. The special permit was renewed by City Planning in 2012. Landmark Preservation Commission approved the most updated design on April 11, 2014. The site is currently under construction pursuant to the original special permit. The framing of the West Broadway building has been completed, and the restoration of the Worcester Street building has begun. These two boards are the 2007 building section drawings. In terms of use, the previously approved special permit modified the use regulations to allow residential use in both buildings and to allow retail use on a portion of the ground floor and cellar of the West Broadway building. In terms of bulk, the approved special permit modified the height and setback regulations and the rear yard regulations to allow the street wall of the West Broadway building to rise higher than permitted, the initial setback distance narrower than that required, a small rear yard encroachment, and the cornice on top of the 8th floor to penetrate the sky exposure plane. The applicant now proposes the following modifications. The first modification is for use. In terms of the West Broadway building, as approved in the original special permit, the 10th floor was devoted exclusively to a mechanical space. The new proposal reallocates about 1,200 square feet of residential floor area from lower floors to the 10th floor, resulting in a larger footprint of the floor and adjustments to the location of mechanical equipment. The roof height of the building is therefore increased by about 9 feet, and the height of the elevator bulkhead is increased by roughly 7 feet to about 134 feet. However, the increase in the footprint of the 10th floor and the height is within the as-of-right building envelope. Second, there is addition of a mansard roof and redesigned facades consisting cast aluminum frames. The front and rear walls of the building are placed behind the frames, which such placement facilitates the reduction of floor area on those lower floors. Third, the elevation to ground floor is raised, and the cellar is eliminated in the West Broadway building to comply with new floodplain regulations adopted after Hurricane Sandy. Overall, in the West Broadway building, the residential floor area is reduced by about 250 square feet, while the commercial floor area is reduced for about 550 square feet. Only minor changes are proposed to the Worcester Street building. As you can see in the comparative boards, the cellar would be enlarged in the Worcester Street building. The cellar would be enlarged to accommodate a fire pump room, relocated accessory gym, and a code-required water tank. Also, due to minor floor plate adjustments, the amount of floor area in the Worcester Street building is reduced by about 85 square feet. Overall, the modified project would have a total floor area of 55,083 square feet, about 900 square feet less than previously approved, and an FAR of 4.92. Both commercial and residential floor area would be reduced. The proposed modifications also do not increase the degree of previously granted bulk waivers or result in the need for any additional bulk waivers. That's it.
Thank you, Sylvia. Questions for Sylvia? Ms. Cantor? Mike?
Help me please on this transference of the mechanical room. The mechanical room currently is on the roof, and it does not count as FAR. The suggestion is now to move an apartment up to the roof, which becomes FAR. And the mechanical does what?
The location of the mechanical equipment is adjusted. So it used to be on the 10th floor, and now it's stacked on top of each other. So the 10th floor would be partly residential and partly mechanical, and then the bulkhead is raised.
Is any of the mechanical space in its relocated position capable of being converted from a mechanical room to a room?
I don't think so, but I could get back to you on that. But I don't think so.
Because we've had that experience.
We will confirm that it can't be. We don't think it can be, but we'll confirm it.
Thank you.
Other questions for Sylvia? Okay, so this is going to be referred out,
Yes.
45 days?
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Our next item, we're on item number 6, page 161. It's actually a post-community board review for a proposed renewal of a previously approved special permit by the City Planning Commission to facilitate a mixed-use development and a proposed modification to that previously approved special permit. We're on item number 6, page 161. Our presenter is Vivian. It appears that we have Vivian's not
No.
here yet.
Eric just went to get it.
I want to know why the Seahawks threw the ball.
What?
I want to know why the Seahawks threw the ball. I don't get it.
They
Give
outsmarted
us- Go to the
themselves.
next
We need a
item.
commission of inquiry just on that one.
They
That's true.
outsmarted themselves.
Just
We
one
also, Mr. Chairman, I believe Jamie Rojo is in the audience as well, so we could go to the next item, then come back to
Okay.
that one. So Jamie, I'd like to introduce Jamie Rojo, who is also a brand-new planner in the Manhattan office. She's making her debut presentation before the City Planning Commission today. We're on item number 8, page 252. Proposed second renewal to a previously approved special permit concerning a public parking garage. And we'll come back to item number 8. Item number 8, page 252.
Hi, good afternoon. So this application is for 95 West 95th Street parking garage. It's for a second request for a renewal, 3-year renewal for a previously approved special permit for a parking garage pursuant to Section 11-43 of the zoning resolution. The special permit was originally approved by the City Council and the Planning Commission in 2007 to allow an attended public parking garage located in the C19 zoning district with a maximum of 100 spaces, including 43 accessory spaces, and to exempt 925 square feet of the floor area on the ground floor from the definition of floor area pursuant to sections 13-562 and 74-52 of the zoning resolution. The special permit may be renewed without public hearing for 2 additional 3-year terms pursuant to Section 11-43 of the zoning resolution. In 2011, an application was submitted for the first 3-year renewal, and the application is now seeking a second and final third 3-year renewal. The area surrounding the site is characterized by high-density residential towers with local ground floor retail and service uses along the avenue and numerous school and other community facility uses scattered throughout the area. Most of Columbus Avenue from West 87th Street to West 104th Street was developed through the urban renewal plans that produced several large residential towers that range from 20 to 35 stories in height. Other residential developments in the area include the Park West Village apartment complex, which contains several residential structures and occupies 2 superblocks on both sides of Columbus Avenue. Going over to the area map over here, the project, as I noted before, is located at 95 West 95th Street, which is right here. between 95th Street and 96th Street on Columbus Avenue in Manhattan Community District 7 within the C19 and R9 zoning districts. The C19 district is mapped along Columbus Avenue to a depth of 150 feet, as you can see on this portion right here. And the R9 zoning district is mapped on the northern part of the MIG block between Central Park West and Columbus Avenue, which is this little portion right here. The site occupies the full eastern block front of Columbus Avenue between 95th and 95th Streets and extends approximately 200 feet east along 96th Street. Development on the site, currently there's an existing 33-story residential tower, which you can see from these boards right here, with ground floor commercial space located on the northern half of the site and a one-story commercial building located on the southwest corner of the site. In total, the site has 252,448 square feet of residential floor area and 9,830 square feet of commercial floor area. The residential tower and the one-story commercial building are set back at street level, which results in widened sidewalks along all 3 street frontages, as you can see in these photographs here. The residential entrance faces West 95th Street and is also accessible from Columbus Avenue via a passageway between the tower and the one-story building. The project site is well served by transit with subway stations at 96th Street to the east and west. The parking garage, moving on to the parking garage site plan, the building currently includes 2 unattended accessory parking garages with 49 spaces each located on the street, cellar, and sub-cellar levels of the residential buildings, with separate access via 2 15-foot wide curb cuts on West 96th Street, which is a 2-way major crosstown street. So as you can see, the 2 entrances are here. The portion of the garage located on the east side of the site within the R9 district will remain as an accessory parking garage and will become an attended garage with 55 spaces. The 2007 special permit allowed for the portion of the garage on the west side of the site, which is located in the C9 zoning district, to be converted into a public parking garage with 100 spaces, 43 of which will remain accessory for the buildings on site. The garages have not been redeveloped pursuant to the special permit, and they currently remain in operation as 2 separate accessory garages. The proposed parking garage will be accessed as well from the western curb cut as it is right now. In terms of accessing the garage, vehicles will proceed down a ramp to the subcellar level of the building. So this is the subcellar level where the required 10 reservoir spaces, the 10 reservoir spaces are here, will be located. At a stop point, attendants will take the vehicles and park them either on the subcellar level or the cellar level, which will be accessed by means of a vehicle elevator. After dropping off the vehicles, the tenants of the residential building using the garage would be able to access the residential towers, elevators, and stair through a door on this level as well. Land use actions requested for this application. The applicant has stated that due to a downturn in the real estate market and economy, construction of the garage has been delayed. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a second and final 3-year renewal of the previously approved special permit. Pursuant to Section 11-42 of the zoning resolution, a special permit lapses if substantial construction has not been completed within 4 years of the effective date. Section 11-43 allows the commission to renew a special permit for up to 2 additional 3-year terms upon finding the facts upon which the special permit granted has not substantially changed. And in this case, the project has not changed at all. They're not proposing any changes. The project was referred out to the community board in November 2014. That concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jamie. Ms. Deleuze, then Ms. Efron, then Ms. Ortiz.
I have no concern, honestly, with the special permit, but I'm just wondering how long applicants get to claim that the downturn in the real estate market and the economy is the reason for the delay post-downturn.
Well, I don't think any of us who are familiar with the West Side have seen a downturn in parking demand on the west side of Manhattan. Ms. Efron.
I have a similar question. Is there just a sense of the project budget for this? Is it something that is so onerous that perhaps it could never be built?
That I don't know anything about the project budget. I can look into it, but I
But
don't.
since it's an economic argument, it seems relevant to know.
Definitely, I can look into that.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi. One question for clarification. There's mention that the public parking garage generates 925 square feet of commercial floor area that is now exempt because it is an accessory use. What accessory use results in an exemption here?
Well, because the garage, it converted to a public garage, and it's part of the C19 district. It allows, well, currently they were at their max of the commercial floor area. So by converting it to a public use within the C19, it went over that commercial floor area. So we're just exempting that portion in the C19 that's converting to the public garage.
But how can that exemption occur? My understanding is that it's exempted because it's an accessory, some sort of accessory use? And what are the rules for that?
I'd have to look into that. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to understand.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Levin? Did you have?
No. Pursuant to your question, Commissioners, as part of the special permit, if you look on page 273, the applicant is allowed to exempt from the definition of floor area additional floor spaces in order to prevent excessive on-street parking demand and relative traffic congestion. So in this instance, they were exempted from using that floor area toward the count. So that was part of the commission.
At that time.
And this, just to be clear, this is an independent use entirely. This is not owned by the adjacent co-op.
No.
Just a standalone
Correct.
garage. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Accept a show of hands to assent to sending an approval letter to the buildings department to allow.
Last time.
They have three years to wait out that recession.
That real estate market downturn.
It'll be a recession.
Thank you.
Now, let's go back to item number 6. We're on page 161, Manhattan non-ULURP action with respect to 341 Canal Street, which involves a proposed renewal of a previously approved special permit to facilitate a mixed-use development and a proposed modification to that special permit. Our presenter is Vivian. This is item number 6, page 161.
Maybe I just wanted to come down and see you.
He's got that really luxury sedan thing going on. I can't imagine.
Okay, good afternoon.
He had heard that you were a member of the planning commission.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Feel like I'm repeating everything that you just heard regarding renewals of special permits. The subject application is seeking 2 actions: the renewal of a special permit that was granted in 2008 and the modification of that special permit. The subject site is located at 341 Canal Street, which is this corner here. It's at the northwest corner of Canal and Green Streets. It's within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, and it's within an M15B zoning district. The site is vacant, is currently being used as a parking lot. In 2008, the Commission approved a special permit pursuant to Section 74-712 to facilitate the construction at 341 Canal Street of a 7-story mixed-use building with residential use on the upper floors and commercial use on the ground floor. The proposal included 34 residential units. Residential use, as you know, is not permitted in the M15B district, and commercial use is not allowed on the ground floor. Further, the proposed building did not comply with the height and setback regulations for the area. The building intruded into the sky exposure plane, which you can see here. This is a little area in pink. It is the area which intrudes into the sky exposure plane. Section 74-712 allows for the development of residential buildings on vacant sites in M15A and M15B zoning districts. Use and bulk provisions may be modified provided that the development meets certain findings. These include not having an adverse effect on conforming uses in the surrounding area and compatibility with the uses in the surrounding area. For residential uses, the finding includes compatibility with the scale of the surrounding area. There are 2 bulk findings. One finding is that the building relate harmoniously to other buildings in the historic district as evidenced by a CFA or other permit from LPC. The second finding is that the development does not adversely affect structures or open space in the vicinity in terms of scale, location, and access to light and air. LPC did grant a certificate of occupancy, certificate of appropriateness, and the Commission approved the application in 2008. The approved development had an FAR of 5.0, a total square footage of 65,996 square feet of floor area, including 54,015 square feet of residential use and 11,981 square feet of commercial use. The property was sold and remained undeveloped. The special permit lapsed in 2008. As per zoning resolution section 1142, a special permit granted by the Commission will automatically lapse within 4 years unless substantial construction has been completed. Further, pursuant to section 1143, any special permit that would automatically lapse may be renewed for 2 additional terms without a public hearing, provided that the facts upon which the special permit was granted have not changed. In 2012, an application was filed for the renewal of the special permit. The applicant proposes that the facts upon which the Commission approved the application in 2008 have not substantially changed. The second action is for the modification of the approved plans. The applicant proposes filling in an air shaft which would extend, that is this area here in yellow, which would extend from the roof of the first floor to the top of the building. That would add 900 square feet of floor area to the building, to the total floor area of the building. The applicant returned to Landmarks for a new certificate of appropriateness. Working together with Landmarks, several aspects of the design were modified. The windows on the building, would each be recessed by about 1 foot. You can't really see it, but that is this green line here. That would subtract about 2,000 square feet of floor area from the building, getting it closer to its original floor area as originally approved. The total square footage of the building, including commercial and residential square footage, then remain the same. The FAR remains 5.0. Second, the roof line would be lowered by 1 foot to align with the roof line of the building to its west. This modification reduces the degree of noncompliance. The building, as modified, penetrates the sky exposure plane to a lesser degree than the previous approved plan. And again, you can't see it very clearly on these drawings, but they are to the same scale, and you can just visually see that there is less intrusion into the sky exposure plane, the pink area, in the proposed plans versus the existing plans. The building, as modified, would consist of 31 units. The approved building had been proposed for 34 units. The applicant has presented the application to the community board at its October meeting, and the community board sent back a resolution approving the application. The letter which we received was not clear if the applicant had presented both the modification as well as the renewal. Further, the application was presented to the community board prior to us receiving the last final revised version of the application. And I believe you all received correspondence to that effect. Yeah, got it.
Any questions for Vivian? Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. Vivian, as I understood the thrust of your presentation, the application was approved at one time,
Yes.
renewed,
Yes.
on the premise that it was identical to the prior.
Oh, this is the first renewal.
Oh,
It was approved in
you know, you give the
2008.
whole story. The guy is trying to, on the first renewal, change the criteria.
No.
Well, no.
Why not?
This is the first renewal.
Yes, this is the first renewal, and they are modifying the approved plans.
But historically, isn't our right to agree to that renewal contingent upon the fact that it's identical to the original?
That it substantially complies with the original approved plans.
Substantially compliant.
That's the terminology, yes, substantially.
Have not substantially changed.
Not substantial.
It's not substantial.
Right.
Okay,
I thought it was substantial.
yeah.
Ms. Levin?
Yes, I think I have a related question. The briefing package says that the original permit lapsed, and then they filed for the renewal, but I didn't think you could do that. I thought as you were running up to the end of a period of a valid permit, you could apply for a renewal, but I don't think you can apply after it's lapsed.
Yeah, yes.
So the original permit was was approved in 2008.
Yes,
So you have 4 years.
right?
So that would bring us to 2012.
But-
The applicant applied for the first renewal, this project, in 2012.
Did it apply
Before it lapsed.
The
Okay.
Permit lapsed.
Okay.
It wasn't approved, but the application
Yeah,
was.
but they got in under the
Yes.
deadline. They
Yes.
applied while they still had a valid
Yes.
permit.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So that leads then to another question. Why did it take 2.5 years or more to get to today? Because in effect, that gives them a third renewal, right? They've got
No.
another stretch of time. Well, they bought themselves another few years.
There were changes,
In ownership.
there were a lot of discussions, there was a lot of communication, there were some revisions to the plans. There was just, all I can really say is there was a lot of back and forth with the applicant. Jackie, anything else?
Wasn't there a change in ownership? That's what the memo says.
Can I just, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't get them another 2 years. The renewal, if granted, will run from the date of the end of the first approval. So,
Okay.
so it's not.
Good, thank you.
So you can't sort of game the system in a sense.
That's what I was
by-
worried about.
Right.
They were doing.
So.
Okay, so
So,
this
The renewal that's
expiration,
before you will run
So
through
it's retroactive.
2015,
right.
and
So we can.
We're engaged with the applicant now on the second renewal.
I'm getting ready.
So
Okay,
so the likelihood is we're going to see
All right, it's a coming attraction. Thank you.
another application before us in the not-too-distant future.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that, I think,
Yes.
is everyone clear now, I think,
Yes.
on everything? So if the application before us is to renew the permit from the date of the expiration of the original permit and to modify the permit very slightly but insubstantially in accordance with the description that Vivian gave, and in accordance with the letter from the chair of Community Board 2, that when they voted and approved this matter, they were both considering the renewal of the permit and the modification, which they also approved. And if everyone agrees on that, I'll ask for a show of hands to send it as such to the Department of Buildings. And I'm sure we'll see this before us before too much time elapses.
Thank you, Vivian. Let's now move to item number 7.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dwight.
Just a question, on the next renewal, is it going to come up for are we going to have to vote on the modification again, or the modification is now grandfathered in as approved?
I believe the modification is grandfathered in, but again, it would not be able to renew unless the renewal was, again, in substantial compliance with the current approval. And I assume if there was any change, we would be looking not only at the modified permit, but looking back to make sure it was in substantial compliance.
To the original?
More generally to the original.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Now, let's move to item number 7, page 194. It's a proposed modification to a previously approved special permit concerning a public parking garage at 332 West 44th Street. We're on item number 7, page 194. Our presenter is Ezra Moser from the Manhattan office. Back from Community Board Review.
Good afternoon. So this is an application returning from referral to Community Board 4, which voted to approve with conditions, 36 in favor, 1 opposed. I'll go over the details of the conditions shortly. But this is an application for a modification to a special permit granted pursuant to sections 13.562, which has since been superseded, Section 7452, and Section 9611 for a 3-story plus roof public parking garage located at 332 West 44th Street in Manhattan. The applicant states the modifications will facilitate changes to the garage's internal configuration in order to improve vehicular circulation and customer safety and efficiency. These would also result in a net reduction in parking spaces as well as reservoir spaces. So, as is visible here, it's located in Clinton on the northerly side of a block bounded by West 44th Street, West 43rd Street, 8th Avenue, and 9th Avenue. And it's located in a C62 zoning district within the special Clinton district and within the preservation sub-area. So, the parcel is an L-shaped through lot with 172 feet of frontage along West 44th Street and 25 feet of frontage along West 43rd Street. There's approximately 17,272 square feet of lot area. It's currently improved with the subject garage, a 3-story plus roof 350-space attended public parking garage with 18 reservoir spaces. The garage currently contains approximately 44,654 square feet of zoning floor area. The garage has a 2-lane entry on West 44th Street, as well as a 1-lane exit on West 44th Street. It also has a 1-lane exit onto West 43rd Street, the hours of which are restricted to between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. So with the proposed modifications, there will be new, wider staircases installed at the northeasterly and northwesterly corner of the ground floor. These will be replacing narrower staircases located towards the rear of the garage in the existing conditions. New elevators will be installed in the northeasterly corner. The parking spaces above which are all located on the second, third, and roof levels, will be reconfigured to accommodate this new means of access. A new entry lane will be added to the formerly 1-lane exit onto West 44th Street. This would be in order to improve access and avoid any potential congestion on the street. The curb cut here would be widened to 22 feet. The required reservoir spaces, as seen here in the existing conditions or from the approved drawings, will be reconfigured to 17 spaces that will accommodate the new means of access and the new operations. Furthermore, the garage's middle and western frontages will be reserved for approximately 3,300 square feet of retail floor area, which will activate the streetscape and enliven surroundings. Several employee amenities located towards the center of the garage in the approved plans will be relocated towards the rear, and a new customer service area will be installed over by the elevators and stairs on the northeasterly entrance. And these changes will result in a net reduction of parking from 350 spaces to 337. As well as mentioned, a reduction in reservoir spaces from 18 to 17. It's anticipated that in the proposed conditions, cars entering the garage from either set of entrances will follow the appropriate reservoir lane around to the rear of the garage, where they will be dropped off. An attendant will pick it up and park on the upper levels. The user will then exit the garage following these striped pedestrian pathways. For pickup, returning customers would pay at the new customer service area, and they would wait at this point here for their car to be delivered. If the user intended to egress on the 43rd Street exit, they would pay and then follow the striped pedestrian pathways to a place here where their car would be brought down to them. So would you like me to read the Community Board's conditions and whether the applicant intends to meet them?
Why don't you quickly summarize them?
Okay. The first would be that the applicant installs and maintains a large and attractive planted container adjacent to the bollards on West 43rd Street on that driveway, and cooperate with the Community Board to get a street tree planted near the garage driveway on West 43rd Street. The applicant has said yes to, or that they're willing to put in a planter, and they've looked into the possibility of commissioning murals on the side of the driveway. It should be noted that these, the side of the driveway is actually adjacent building walls. They also are willing to make a financial contribution to getting the street tree planted. The second condition was that the applicant replace the current roll-down gate on the 43rd Street egress with a picket iron gate, so that the landscaping seen here by the bollards and the mural would be visible to the public. The current roll-down gate is approximately 2/3 see-through, and it was actually installed at the Community Board's request with the previous special permit in 2011. The third condition is that the applicant delivers within 6 months, if possible, a white box core and shell for the proposed retail spaces on West 44th Street. And the applicant states that in order to maintain design flexibility for the needs of their future tenant, they'll design and construct the spaces after the tenant is selected. Fourth condition is that the applicant agrees not to rent the retail spaces on 44th Street to any establishment requiring a liquor license. The applicant will meet that condition. Fifth is that the applicant considers the feasibility of an art installation in the driveway on West 43rd Street or in the proposed retail spaces. The applicant says that they'll work with the community board to commission artwork provided it can be done feasibly and at a reasonable cost. And lastly, that the applicant submit a time frame for the new facade improvements on West 44th Street, and this is dependent on the CPC process.
Thank you, Ezra. Any questions? Ms. Efron?
In the 2010 Community Board letter, it states that the School of the Holy Cross, I think, located on that block, is the most dangerous school access or street for children to get to school. And that just struck me as quite a statement. Do we know if that situation has improved, or if there is still entrance as well as exit going off of 43rd Street? Or actually, even with exit, that seems like that would be a big problem.
Well, the exit is restricted to use only between the hours of 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. to address that concern. And
So
it is only exit. There's no possibility of ingress. That's what the bollards and potentially the planters that potentially will be installed are supposed to address. Also, there's a stop gate.
Terrific, thank you very much.
Yep.
And I do note that the community board did not raise that as an issue now. Mr. Cirillo?
Yes. Just a question. On the recommendation or the condition that the applicant agree not to rent to a business or establishment requiring a liquor license.
Correct.
We see that a lot. I'm then going to assume that the property is in a zoning district that permits a use group where a liquor license might otherwise be able to be applied for. Am I correct in that assumption? I'm assuming otherwise it wouldn't be a necessary condition, but.
I can look into that. I think that it was.
The applicant is voluntarily, I understand, and the voluntary nature of this that's between the applicant and the community and making that commitment, and I commend the applicant for being willing to take that on and limit the opportunities potentially available for the retail space. But I have a thing about using us as a tool to modify otherwise appropriate use group options without ultimately then changing the use group. So I'm just wondering, in this context where you have a voluntary agreement, let's say this property changes ownership at some point in time and this applicant is no longer the party in privity to this agreement, I guess all bets are off the table?
I don't believe it's a condition of our.
So we're not making this,
referral.
there's no restrictive declaration being, okay. I just wanted to make sure, because then that changes sort of the nature of this. But I recognize the voluntary nature of this. Okay, thank you.
And I commend the applicant for being a good neighbor.
As
but-
I do too, as I do too. I just wanted to understand legally what was happening on our end when we consider this further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Cantor, then Ms. Ortiz.
The wall you referred to as an exposed wall,
Yeah.
isn't that a party wall?
Well, the driveway is part of the applicant's property, but it is open up to about here. So the walls that would potentially have a mural are the adjacent building walls.
No, but you referenced that it was an exposed wall. Does that wall belong to us, to him, to the guy next door? or is it
The
party
wall along the garage exit onto 43rd Street
What about
belongs to
other
the
wall?
adjacent property.
What about the wall to the right of it?
I believe they both belong to the adjacent property.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Ortiz.
So along that line of questioning, the proposed murals are on the adjacent buildings?
Correct.
Correct. Have those property owners agreed to in concept murals on their walls?
I don't know if that's been discussed at that point. The applicant stated that, if it was feasible, considering their cooperation, this would be something that they would look into, putting up a mural.
Okay. And this is perhaps a question for the applicant, but, murals, there's a huge, wide range of murals and costs associated with murals. So, what reasonable cost means would be important, and the degree to which we know whether this is even a possibility if adjacent owners have been approached. Because it could be,
Yeah.
very well an empty promise.
It could, this is, again, all of these conditions are matters of good faith to be worked out between the applicant and the community, and presumably this is an applicant that will be, either as other parking lots in the area, which I believe it does, or it, if this is not worked out reasonably, will presumably have a more difficult time on a future renewal. But I think that what the community board said is, and the applicant's response to it is an indication of the applicant's desire to work reasonably with the community board, but that's not a condition of our referral. Any other questions for Ezra? If not, with show of hands and assent to refer this to the Buildings Department for approval. Thank you. Thanks, Ezra.
Thank you.
Let's now move to item number 9, page 280, proposed authorization to facilitate JLWQA within an existing building at 106-112 Spring Street. Post Community Board referral. Our presenter is Edwin Marshall of the Manhattan office. We're now on item number 9, page 280.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The applicant seeks the grant of an authorization pursuant to Section 42-142 of the zoning resolution to allow the conversion of the cellar and first floor from Use Group 6 retail space to joint living work quarters for artist units, which is Use Group 17D, within an existing mixed-use building located at 106-112 Spring Street. The building is located within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, within Manhattan Community District 2. Just briefly, 106-112 Spring Street is located at the southwest corner of Spring and Mercer Street. This is a photograph of the existing built condition. The zoning lot comprises 2 buildings on 2 tax lots, tax lot 21 and tax lot 22. The zoning lot has 70 feet of frontage along Spring Street and 125 feet of frontage along Mercer Street. In total, the zoning lot has 10,381 square feet of lot area. On tax lot 21, it's developed with a 6-story loft-style building with 10 joint living work quarter for artist units and ground floor retail space. The ground floor retail space was granted by City Planning Commission special permit in 2003. Tax lot 22, which is located right here, is also developed with a 6-story loft-style building, which would be right about there. That also has 10 joint living work quarter for artist units, Use Group 6 ground floor retail space, which was also granted by the same City Planning Commission special permit in 2003. In total, the zoning lot has 20 joint living work quarter for artist units, has approximately 8,200 square feet of ground floor retail space, about 5,100 square feet of retail space in the cellar, and the building is built to 5.74 FAR. The site is located within an M15A zoning district, which allows light industrial and commercial uses as of right up to 5 FAR and community facility uses up to 6.5 FAR. However, use group 6 local retail uses are not permitted below the second floor of any building on a zoning lot having more than 3,600 square feet. Again, this zoning lot has 10,000 square feet. Joint living work quarters for artist units are permitted in existing buildings built prior to 1961 under certain conditions. However, GLWQA units are not permitted as a right below the second level of buildings in M15A and M15B districts, hence the reason for the applicant seeking the grant of the authorization. In terms of the bill program, the applicant would convert ground floor retail space to 3 joint living work quarters for artist spaces. This is the ground floor plan of the existing condition. Again, the ground floor has 8,200 square feet of retail space. Proposed bill program. Would have 3 GLWQA units. 2 of them would be placed on tax lot 21 located right here and accessed from Spring Street. The third one would be placed on tax lot 22 and would be accessed from Mercer Street. There would be no increase in building floor area on the zoning lot, and no new commercial or residential or community facility uses are proposed. The applicant received LPC approval for the proposed conversion of the ground floor and cellar space, and that this proposed conversion received a certificate of no effect. In granting the certificate of no effect, LPC did not require any additional restorative work and believes that the proposed change in use for the ground floor and cellar spaces are consistent with its prior approvals, and that granting this request will contribute to a preservation purpose. Again, the GLQWA units are being placed on the ground floor. They're not being placed in the cellar. In order to grant the authorization, the City Planning Commission shall find that such modification of use requirements shall have minimal adverse effects on the conforming uses located within the building and in the surrounding area. On November 3rd, 2014, this application was referred to Community Board 2 for 45 days. Upon review, the board supports this application, had no issues, had no concerns, and accordingly did not submit a letter or any type of documents to us. Now, on November 3rd, the commission had questions about why the applicant is requesting approval of this application to convert the ground floor retail space to GLWQA space. In response, we have reached out to the applicant, and we have placed a letter in your briefing package from their tax attorney, which provides a rationale for the application. The requested action gives the applicant the flexibility to convert the ground floor space to joint living work quarter for artist space. As stated in the letter, the grant of the authorization would enable the applicant to allocate new shares to the ground floor units and issue the shares to an unrelated purchaser without jeopardizing the building's favorable status as a cooperative housing corporation under the federal tax code. This would be the most tax-efficient way to secure equity from the ground floor units, and no federal corporate tax would be imposed on the new shares. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Edwin. Questions? This is an application that swims against the tide. Ms. Levin.
Thank you, Edwin, for getting that explanation from the tax lawyers, which I just find completely fascinating. Makes sense from the standpoint of the property owner. And it's one more reflection of how hot this retail market is in Soho. Coupled with the letter that was in our clippings package, the article in the Post, Lois Weiss writing, quote, "Green Street's on fire," about the values that people are finding in retail. Clearly, property here is worth much more for retail than it is for anything else. These guys have the misfortune of being a co-op, not a condo. And, co-ops can only have 20% of their income be from non-residential purposes, and they're obviously bumping up against it. I wonder if they got busted, if that's why they're doing it. I wonder how many co-ops there are in Soho that we're going to see this again. My sense is that Soho has rather more condos than co-ops, so maybe this one is unusual, but I think we should get ready for more of them. I mean, I understand the tax analysis. But what troubles me about this from a streetscape perspective is that having living quarters, oh, and I guess I'd ask, do we know if all the joint live work spaces are occupied by certified artists?
That we don't know.
Okay. But what bothers me is that having residential space at the street level will, one would assume, have a deadening effect on the streetscape experience. So it goes, in addition to swimming against a whole bunch of tides, it also swims against what we usually, in the planning world, try to have happen at street level. So, I'm not thrilled with the notion of that level of activity disappearing, but I'm certainly sympathetic to their tax situation. I wonder if there isn't a more creative way of solving the problem, but probably requires more process.
So this is hardly an area where street level activity is dead.
Correct.
Ms. Efron.
Though we did talk about the potential risks, since there will be residential with the large storefront windows that are used to maximize viewing into the spaces with a residential unit. And again, I'm not opposed to this. It is just a little bit of concern of there won't be any regulation other than self-regulation as to what passersby see on the street.
Maybe it will be an artistic.
Perhaps.
Ms. Ortiz.
I would agree with, the commissioner's statement, and it is a concern. I do think the failure to incorporate, continual sort of ground floor retail, something that is a concern for me, I know, and additionally, the issues associated with, an awkward residential use on the other side of a very busy street, on the other side of a window of a very busy street. I do appreciate and understand the tax implications, but it still just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm not a tax attorney, but hardly a tax attorney, but I suppose that the owner or the co-op board could exercise self-restraint in how much it charged for the retail, and limit its percentage. But and I don't know, this unit is 20% or more of the building, or no, probably less.
Probably less. This is a fairly large building.
So, interesting issue for the co-op board. Any other questions about this?
Just
Mr. Dweck?
some clarification. Does the joint living work quarters require the artist to live there or just work there?
They have to live there.
They actually have to live there to make that their residence?
They have to live there, and they have to be certified by the Department of Cultural Affairs as well.
But if a certified artist by the Department of Cultural Affairs wanted to use it as his workspace and not actually sleep there every night, make that his residence, is that acceptable?
I think so.
I think so,
That could be studio
Yeah.
space.
That's studio space.
The studio space.
Studio
yeah.
space.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out their angle. Perhaps people won't be actually living on the first floor units and they'll be using it as studio workspace, and they'll qualify for the tax benefits under the joint living work quarters.
Super.
So, I'm not sure who would want to live on the first floor with the huge windows like that.
And given the crowds that,
Right.
Yeah.
Ms. Ortiz?
Just to follow up, Chairman, on your comments in terms of, voluntary reduction in rent so that they don't exceed, the allowable rent. In some ways, it's creating affordable commercial space in a very high rent district. So, why wouldn't we want that?
Well, this is, will be scheduled for a future vote, and we're not voting today, we're not referring it today, and it will give everyone time to contemplate the various permutations that are conceivably possible here. Any other questions for Edwin? Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Our next item is item number 10, page 321, Manhattan pre-hearing application with respect to a proposed special use permit to facilitate a public parking garage at 180 Orchard Street. It's item number 10, page 321. Our presenter is Calvin Brown of the Manhattan office.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. This is an application returning for pre-hearing pursuant to Section 1345 and 13451 of the zoning resolution for a special permit for a below-grade public attended parking garage with 99 spaces to be located at 180 Orchard Street, Lower Manhattan, Community District 3. The subject site is bounded by Ludlow, Orchard, East Houston, and Staten Street, and is located within a C44 A zoning district. The subject site is located on a zoning lot with 12 other tax lots that were included in the 2008 Lower East Side East Village rezoning. The predominant use in the area is mixed use with residential at top and retail commercial space on the bottom. Very lively area during the night and weekend times. As you may recall, during the 11-year look back in this area, there's been very few residential parking spaces created in this area, and off-street public parking has been reduced from 89 spaces in the past 11 years. The subject site has a lot area of approximately 15,679 square feet and has frontage on both Ludlow and Orchard Street. The developments on the site is under construction is a hotel and a proposed commercial uses. It will be a 24-story hotel with approximately 295 rooms and have approximately 154,000 square feet of construction. Is to be expected to be completed in 2015. The applicant is seeking a special permit pursuant to the Manhattan Core Parking Regulations for to facilitate the development of 99 spaces for an attended public parking garage. As of right, 46 spaces are permitted, and the special permit will allow an additional 53 spaces, which will be located on the ground floor, cellar, and subcellar. Both the ingress and egress will be along Ludlow Street via a single 20 feet wide curb cut, and there will be 10 reservoir spaces. This application was certified in October of 2014 and referred to the Community Board. On November 25th, the Community Board approved this application, 33 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstained, and the Borough President issued a recommendation on January 28th approving this application with 2 conditions. The first condition is that the applicant commits to compel the operator of the garage to provide signage and line markings on the ramp that alerts vehicle operators to expect cyclists to pass on the entrance ramps to the garage. So just looking at the cellar level, this is the ground floor level, this is Ludlow Street where the cars will enter. The parking for bicycles is right here next to the office, so they just want some sort of indication to alert the drivers of the cars that you will have bicycles that will be coming to park their bikes, in that location. The second condition that the Borough President provided was that the applicant must ensure that through the way of signage, communication system, or stand-in zone, vehicles are prohibited from standing in the pedestrian right-of-way or travel lane while waiting for entry into the garage. Since the hotel entry is also adjacent to the garage, they just want some sort of safety measures to, while vehicles are waiting to enter, that is safe for pedestrians along the street as well as individuals trying to access the hotel.
Questions? Mr. Knuckles.
Well, thank you, Mr. Weisbrot.
You seem so enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. Calvin, the rendering, what does that, is that What street is that we're looking at? Is that Ludlow or?
Ludlow, and this is the garage entry and the lobby.
Okay. So it's an L shape, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the darker,
Well, no, the building is this building here. This is this adjacent property. So right here, you see the car.
right,
That would be the entryway to the garage.
right.
Right here, this will be the lobby.
But then the darker portion,
Oh, this portion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
a part of it,
Yeah,
yeah,
this is L
okay.
shape.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Any other questions to Calvin? Ms. Efron?
Actually, Commissioner Levin was ahead of.
Ms. Levin?
What's the status of this project? I was by there last week, and it looks like a stalled construction site, no sign of any activity at all. Maybe we'll find out at the hearing?
Yes, and the applicant is in the audience,
Okay.
so.
Good,
Can
yeah,
address
an
that.
update would be great.
Okay.
Ms. Efron?
Thanks. I'm just confirming that this complies with whatever their new regulations are of the department on the subcellars, just because it seems to be very low-lying, and it also is going below the cellar level for the floods.
Yes, I believe it does. It was, reviewed by our technical staff here. And it's according to the new Manhattan regs,
Thanks.
parking core regs.
Any other questions to Calvin? Okay, hearing Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's now advance to item number 11, page 367, proposed use, bulk, and accessory parking special permits to facilitate a mixed-use building and accessory garage at 3941 West 23rd Street, back from Community Board and Borough President review. We're on item number 11, page 367, and our presenter is Dominic N. Sweeney, formerly of the Manhattan office, but now with council's office. He's carrying over this project from before.
This project inspired him to become a lawyer.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, this is an application for 2 special permits to facilitate a new 106,000 square foot, 24 and 10-story mixed-use building at 39-41 West 23rd Street, which would contain 40 dwelling units, about 800 square feet of ground floor retail space, and 50 parking spaces. And it's located here, this mid-block site between 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue, and between 23rd Street and 24th Street. So the actions that are requested here, 1 special permit pursuant to 74-711, because this is in a historic district, it's in the Ladies Mile Historic District. A use modification pursuant to that section, because this is in a M16 district, and the use proposed here is residential. And also a bulk modification, which I'll get into for height and setback and rear yard. And the second requested special permit is pursuant to section 13-451, and that would be for the 50-space accessory parking garage. So the building is proposed to have 2 sides connected by a mid-block ground floor connecting building. On 23rd Street, the building would look. Okay, so this is what the building will look like, is proposed to look like on 23rd Street. It would have an 18-story street wall. It would rise to height about 200 feet. And the 23rd Street portion would then set back 15 feet and then rise to 278 feet. So this is a front-on view of it here on 23rd Street. This would be a look to the east, and you can see here, this is 23rd Street. The building goes up and then sets back 15 feet and then goes all the way to 278 feet. And there's also a 12-foot cantilever here on the 23rd Street side that cantilevers over a building which is included in the zoning lot. 24th Street side, it's a much smaller building, rising to about 130 feet. And it's a little difficult to see here where that building is because the building's blocking it. You can actually see a section of the building a little better here. It rises to about 117 feet before it sets back about 10 feet and then rises again to 130 feet. Now, the ground floor would contain contain a part of the accessory parking garage and also 800 feet of retail. The parking would be accessible on 24th Street. The retail would be accessible on 23rd Street. So this here is the ground floor. This is the 24th Street side, and this is the 23rd Street side. On the 23rd Street side, you can see the portion of 800 square feet of retail, and here is the entrance to the parking. I want to explain the parking because, of course, parking is one of the special permits that's being requested here. So tenants would access the garage via the entrance on West 24th Street. They'd have access via a garage door opening device that they would keep in their cars upon entering. They would wait to access the turntable via one of the two reservoir spaces that you can see here. There's a third reservoir space which is on the turntable itself. How it would work is the car would go into the turntable, would go down a level or two depending on what would be available. It'd be fully automated, and as I noted, it could hold 50 accessory parking spaces. So let me talk now about the actions. Of course, the application would be for a use permit to allow residential in this district, but also want to explain the bulk modifications. And I do apologize, but these are some of the largest boards I've ever had to deal with. It wasn't so much the application that made me go to the council office to get these boards. So what this shows is a section. This is a section that shows the 24th Street building, the smaller building. And this section actually shows both, but I just wanted to demonstrate what the requests are. So here, in this district, the maximum street wall height is 85 feet, and that point is located here. Now, since the height that is requested goes up to about 175 feet, there's a street wall waiver that's requested here, so the street wall would be allowed to go much higher. And then also a sky exposure plane on a wide street would be 1 to 5.6 is penetrated here. And then on the 24th Street side, again, 85 feet is the maximum street wall, and that is penetrated by the 117-foot high street wall. And then slightly, the sky exposure plane, which is 1 to 2.7, is also penetrated. And then lastly, rear yard. So the rear yard, the interior section here, the yard between the two buildings on the second story, it should be 40 feet. And 40 feet is provided here, about 48 feet. But the problem is that the rear yard is not centered properly. The rear yard must be centered on the center of the block, not necessarily the center of where the two buildings are. So there is a small incremental waiver that's requested, about 2 feet 8 inches. For the interior rear yard equivalent. And then, right at this point here, you can see where there is no building, that is to the back of the 24th Street site, there would be a 20-foot rear yard that is required, and the waiver is about 5 feet that's being requested. So this was, oh, sorry, let me also talk about the parking. So pursuant to the special permit for parking, pursuant to 13451, the applicant, using methodology provided by city planning, must examine the change in residential units and residential parking spaces within a third of a mile of the site to show that the proposed accessory parking garage would serve the parking needs of the development. So here, the applicants did a study looking back 10 years and determined that the amount of parking spaces created in the last 10 years over the amount of residential units being created in the last 10 years, the ratio was about 12. And DCP staff looks at anything under 20% to be reasonable. So pursuant to how Section 13451 and Section 1345 are generally interpreted by the staff, it would seem that the amount of parking that's being added here, 50 spaces, is reasonable. So anyway, just wanted to say that it also, okay, sorry. CB5 held a public hearing on this December 11th, and they submitted a letter to us with 3 parts. Now, the first part was the city plan, the community board voted to approve the parking by a vote of 18 to 15. They also voted to approve the bulk modifications. However, they decided to vote down the use modification by a vote of 23 to 10. And the rationales were basically that Community Board 5 had consistently advocated for the use of the importance of commercial uses in this area. It is an M16 district, where of course commercial uses are allowed and manufacturing but not residential. And the Community Board wanted to accentuate the fact that it's not that they necessarily have a problem with residential use, but the piecemeal encroachment of residential use in a manufacturing district is what the issue is here. The Community Board wanted to point out that the 2006 application on this site, they had posed, and they note that each incremental residential unit modifies the area without looking at the area in a totality, like a planning, a rational basis for a planning study of this area. Also, the Community Board wanted to note that there would be no provision of units for affordable housing. And lastly, that a commercially viable building, they believe, could be built here on 23rd Street, between 23rd and 24th Street. So then the borough president, in a letter dated January 27th, stated that the president agreed with the community board with the issue with the piecemeal rezoning by use of 74-711, noted that this area had been maintained as part of an M16 manufacturing district that could provide a supply of Class B and C office space. And versus the 2006 application, which I believe would have permitted 63 units, this would have provided about 40 units. And as the borough president notes, it raises an important policy issue of whether the landscape and uses of the area should be changed for the benefit of so few units. In summation, the community board, the city planning commission and the community board were asked by the borough president to take a look at this, and that if this area would be rezoned residential, but the proposal should be not a piecemeal plan, it should also include a plan for affordable housing. So also, the borough president also, while having a problem with the use modification here, was fine with the bulk modification, but also disapproved the special permit for the parking. Now with that, the borough president noted that if the residential use is not appropriate for this site, then the need for parking spaces serving that use should also be re-examined. And lastly, the proposed design, the president believed, did not describe any space being available to load or unload commercial or personal vehicles or cargo for passengers. As the letter notes, it's conceivable that a vehicle containing fully mobile people could be expected to quickly exit and leave the turntable to file the vehicle away. But loading or unloading a person who has a physical disability or is fragile will create a bottleneck to the system. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Dominic. And I think, as you all will recall from when this was certified, we had approved this, a 23rd Street 1.0, I guess, in 2006. But at that time, there was only proposed to be one unit, as I recall, on the 24th Street side of the building, of the complex. And that has obviously changed significantly since under this proposed modification. So with that, I will open it for questions. Ms. Efron.
Do you or just somebody in the department have a sense of the vacancy rate for Class B and C space in the area? Strikes me as very, very low. Just wondering.
I know just some things I've read, not anything official that's produced by the Department of City Planning, but I know at least in this area, 30s in particular. It probably also extends to this area. I know for that type of use, the vacancy rate is low, but that's just something I've read, not anything that is based on a city planning study that I'm aware of.
Any other questions? Well, this will be a very interesting public hearing on Wednesday. Thank you,
It's not
Dominic.
this one, it's that one.
Let's now move to item number 12, Manhattan pre-hearing application with respect to a Department of City Planning proposed zoning text amendment and city map amendment concerning Vanderbilt corridor. Our presenter will be the director of the Manhattan office, Edith Suchet.
Mr. Chairman, may we note that I am still recused from this matter? Oh, yes, I wouldn't miss the future vote section, so I will be in my office and I will be back.
Duly noted.
You think you'll be back?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Okay, now can I see? Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Yeah, we have a public hearing on Wednesday for the Vanderbilt corridor, the One Vanderbilt project. We'll talk a little bit more about logistics at the end of our presentations, but just so you know in advance, the hearing, we will hear both items together to have a more efficient hearing. So, okay. I will present Vanderbilt corridor, and Frank will present One Vanderbilt. So we have abridged presentations, abridged from what you saw at certification. We'll go into these actions in just a moment. The purpose of the zoning proposal is to strengthen the the purpose of the zoning proposal is to strengthen East Midtown as a world-class competitive business district for the long term. As you know, separate from this action, there is a group, the Greater East Midtown Stakeholder Group, led by Council Member Dan Goronick and Borough President Gail Brewer, who are undertaking a series of discussions to develop a framework of recommendations for the larger East Midtown area, the Greater East Midtown area, which covers approximately 80 blocks from 37th to 59th Street, from 5th Avenue to 2nd Avenue. Those recommendations will come out in the spring. In the meantime, we are in ULURP. We are advancing a proposal for Vanderbilt corridor, which is just these 5 blocks in East Midtown from 42nd to 47th Street, between Madison and Vanderbilt, just west of Grand Central Terminal. Why are we advancing Vanderbilt corridor? First, very important reasons. First, there's broad consensus that this location is the right location for new development. You're right at transit. You're at the transit hub of Grand Central Terminal, which sees over 600,000 trips and transfers of subway riders and transit users on a daily basis. There are near-term development sites that we all know about. Of course, there's the SL Green block, which is the southernmost block between 42nd and 43rd. The MTA, former headquarters, they're moving downtown, as you know. The MTA has issued an RFP for developers to redevelop that site. There will be representatives from MTA on Wednesday who will speak about this and other aspects of the MTA. And also the Roosevelt Hotel, there are no plans, current plans, but it has been identified by both the public and the private sector as a potential development site, in that it is an underbuilt site, 12 FAR site in an area that has a maximum FAR of 15, and we are proposing greater. There are other reasons why we're moving with Vanderbilt corridor. First, there's also limited ability for landmarks in the Grand Central Subdistrict, primarily, of course, Grand Central Terminal, to transfer its unused development rights. We believe it's very important to enhance those transfers. And of course, in this area, there are very real and palpable public realm transit challenges. We've all been on the 456, and we all recognize that there must be improvements to that subway station to facilitate really movement along the entire Lex line. There are also other public realm challenges, lack of public open space and narrow sidewalk width. Okay. So the proposed actions proposed by the city are a series of text amendments and a city map amendment that would remap one block of Vanderbilt, the 42nd, 43rd block, into a public place, which would allow the future pedestrianization of that space. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, on the text amendments. We are proposing the creation of a new special permit called the Grand Central Public Realm Improvements Bonus. That's based on the subway improvement bonus. That would allow a floor area bonus from allowing buildings to go from 15 to 30 FAR upon discretionary review in exchange for major improvements to the public realm or transit system. Second, we are modifying an existing special permit that's within the Grand Central Subdistrict today. It's called 81635. It allows a transfer up to 6.6 FAR from 15 to 21.6 FAR within the Grand Central Subdistrict core. We are proposing changes to that to help encourage more use of landmark TDRs. And finally, we are proposing a new special permit for new hotel use in the corridor. So a little bit more on the corridor. We are bird's eye view looking, this is south, this is north. This is 42nd Street. This is the SL Green site here. 317 Madison is really four buildings on one block. The next block to the north is 335 Madison. It is an office building, formerly the Biltmore Hotel, built last 1920s, but was undertook a major renovation in the 1980s. It's a major commercial building now. On the third block, we have the MTA headquarters fronting Madison. The Yale Club is on this block fronting on Vanderbilt. And then here we have 52 Vanderbilt, a office building. This block between, 45th and 46th is the Roosevelt Hotel. And then finally, the northernmost block is 383 Madison, now a JP Morgan Chase building, formerly constructed to be the Bear Stearns headquarters. Each of these blocks contains about 43,000 square feet in lot area. They're virtually identical. They're all square blocks. They're all within the C53 zoning district, which allows, again, a maximum FAR of 15. They're all located with the Grand Central Subdistrict core area. Today, yes, you could build up to 15, which is approximately 700,000 square feet as of right. So getting into the nitty-gritty of our proposed new special permit, again, it would permit a floor area bonus for developments in the Vanderbilt corridor, only for sites within the corridor, provided that those developments provide major improvements to the pedestrian and transit network. Those improvements could be on-site or off-site, could be at grade or below grade. The floor area bonus could be up to 15 FAR, so an increase from 15 to 30 FAR, and this is through full discretionary review. The improvements would be required to be completed before a temporary CFO could be issued for the bonus floor area in the development. And there are requirements, there are findings that the commission must make about the proposed improvements, as well as to the building massing, the site plan, and to sustainability. And partnering this special permit is also another special permit that allows for bulk and urban design requirements to be modified in order to achieve the desired building with all its improvements. The CPC findings, they deal with, well, first and foremost, the improvements that are proposed by the developer to merit the floor area bonus. In 81641B, where you will find the findings language, this is just a very short abbreviation, the commission must find that for the above grade improvements, that the on-site improvements result in a prominent space. This is the kind of language that we have in the findings. I know there was some question about this at certification. That the on-site improvements result in a prominent space of generous proportions and high-quality design. And I am abridging here, and must result in cohesive and a harmonious site plan. Again, high-quality public space. The off-site proposed improvements must support smooth circulation and result in comfortable places for walking and resting. There should be opportunities for planting and improvements to pedestrian safety, and there should be better overall user experience. In the case where a proposed improvement is to go through a process led by the Department of Transportation subsequent to the approval, the commission would have to weigh some of these findings. Now, for the below-grade improvements to the pedestrian or mass transit circulation network, the commission shall find that, there must be significant and generous connections, that the major improvements will increase public accessibility to the below-grade pedestrian circulation network between and within subway stations, and that there be significant enhancements to the environment of the subway station or the rail mass transit facility, including better daylight access, noise abatement, air quality improvements, lighting finishes, wayfinding, or rider orientation. So we highlight these to note to you that the language of the findings, the text of the findings does include specific things for the commission to review as it's making its finding. The other findings that the commission must make pertain to the building ground floor, design massing, and sustainability. These three elements are not categories in which the commission is making a determination for bonus floor area, but these findings must be made that the ground floor is resulting in a lively streetscape, the design of the proposed building and the massing of the proposed building ensures light and air to the streets, that the tower top produces a distinctive addition to the Midtown Manhattan skyline, and that the design overall demonstrates an integrated and well-designed facade. And then on sustainability, the commission, as we've drafted the text, the commission must find that the building and site design are in keeping with the best practices of sustainable design and will substantially reduce energy usage for the building as compared to comparable buildings. Okay, so moving on to the modification of the existing special permit. Again, we're doing this to facilitate the transfer of landmark TDR from landmarks within the Grand Central Subdistrict. So again, that's primarily Grand Central Terminal, which still has about 1.3 million square feet of unused development rights. How we would enhance their transferability is we would raise the maximum FAR in the Vanderbilt corridor from 21.6 to 30 FAR. Today, if you use this special permit, the 81635 special permit, you can only get up to 21.6 FAR, which is the FAR of the JP Morgan Chase building, which you saw at the northern end of the corridor. That was the only building to use this special permit in 20 years of this, more than 20 years of the existence of this special permit. So we're really trying to get more landmark TDR usage. We would also change the requirement that a transit or pedestrian-related improvement be a requirement, a prerequisite requirement of the special permit. We feel that this requirement on top of the TDR is really a double whammy and has disincentivized use of the landmark TDR special permit. And finally, the third special permit is to require for any new hotel use in Vanderbilt corridor, whether it's through brand new construction, conversion, or enlargement, that any new hotel use go through a special permit process. And this is to ensure that any new hotel use here in Vanderbilt corridor and here at the heart of the business district is really a full-service hotel that will support and strengthen East Midtown as a business district. And then finally, our public a city map change to designate one block of Vanderbilt from 42nd to 43rd into a public place. And again, this will allow the permanent improvement of this block of Vanderbilt into a pedestrianized space to be designed in a process led by Department of Transportation. As you may know, they have a established process and framework in designing an outdoor space with the public, with the community, with the elected. And we anticipate this process to start, I would say, around 2017. The developer, SL Green, developer of the One Vanderbilt proposal, would be responsible for constructing, and with the bid, they are determining an overall long-term maintenance plan for this one block of Vanderbilt. Okay. So let's get to the community board and the borough president's recommendations. On December 11th, the Community Board 5 issued a resolution for disapproval with conditions. On December 11th, Community Board 6 issued an identical resolution for a disapproval with conditions. And these are the conditions. That's a lot of words. Try to be succinct. First, that the text amendment be limited just to sites for which the city and the MTA have identified or coordinated a plan for improvements in the public realm. Second, the Community Board asked that the text amendment provide guidelines for what type of improvements merit an FAR floor area bonus for affected zoning lots. 3, they request that the text amendment require that any building granted a bonus pursuant to our new special permit for floor area bonus be designed to perform at least 30% better than ASHRAE, and as determined by the methodology prescribed in the most up-to-date New York City Energy Conservation Code. 4, they asked that the East Midtown Steering Committee, which is looking at the overall area, the 80 blocks of East Midtown, they asked that the committee fully consider these 5 blocks of Vanderbilt corridor as it issues its recommendation for the greater East Midtown area. 5, they asked that the text amendment be specific in requiring the LPC to issue a letter of support of harmonious relationship between any development and Grand Central Terminal. So not necessarily a landmark that is sending the development rights, but Grand Central Terminal. And 6, the text amendment, they asked that the text amendment specify that only certain sites be able to merit the full 15 FAR bonus. Specifically, they think those sites should be only blocks that front on, sites that only front on more than one wide street, that overlook the Grand Central Air Park, and that are adjacent to subway station with access to pedestrian circulation system of Grand Central Terminal. So in short, if I wasn't clear about that, they're asking for a treatment that's different for the SL Green block versus the northern 4 blocks. On January 15th, the Borough Board issued a recommendation for disapproval with conditions. The Borough Board recommended this conditional disapproval with saying that unless a responsible conclusion is reached on issues of public access and public spaces relating to the terminal and its circulation network, the environmental sustainability requirements of the proposed zoning text, and the language of the zoning text relating to and the method for achieving significant FAR bonuses. Finally, just last week, the Borough President issued an approval with conditions, subject to the following conditions. This is just for Vanderbilt corridor. Frank will address the one Vanderbilt recommendations. It asked the City Planning Commission, it actually asked the department to make recommendations to the City Planning Commission on 3 elements. And we have issued a letter to the Borough President, which was attached in her recommendation, assuring her that we would indeed make these recommendations. Number 1, we would clarify the text to be clear about what the floor area bonus is being generated for. Right now, the text shows in the Commission's findings that the Commission must find, that the on-site and off-site and below-grade improvements are X, Y, and Z. We had included also in that list findings pertaining to the site plan, massing, and sustainability. The Borough President's Office asked us to be clear that the floor area bonus is with respect to the improvements and not to the other requirements, site planning, massing, and sustainability. Second, the Borough President asked us to clarify language on sustainability. We fully agree with this and we will be recommending formally to the Commission that instead of saying we are requiring that buildings meet best practices, we would say that the buildings would be required to meet or exceed the best practices in sustainable design. Further, we would recommend that the text be modified to require application materials that demonstrate energy use compared with then current New York City Energy Conservation Code. And finally, on the question of maintenance, the borough president requested that we establish in the text a requirement that the applicant or developer state the intention for the maintenance of the improvements. And so we think that's an absolutely very fair request, as with the others. And we would also be recommending to the commission that there be language clarifying and requiring intent of maintenance. So that concludes the borough president's recommendation, and the borough board and the community board. Again, the hearing is on Wednesday. We will do it jointly with 1 Vanderbilt. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Do you want to take questions now, or do you
Yes,
want to?
I think so, yes. Questions on on Vanderbilt corridor now, and then we'll do 1 Vanderbilt separately.
Okay. Questions for Edith? Mr. Cantor.
Thank you.
As I recall, with the prior administration, some of these items were covered, some were not. But one of the items that was a sticking point, I think, was the reference to going from 15 FAR to 30 FAR is, as the language was constructed then at least, gave the chair the right to make the decision in terms of how much new floor area would go, how much would not go. And that was, there were a series of governing criteria, some of which included aesthetics, which is extremely subjective, as we all know. I think the chair realizes, without me saying so, I'm not speaking to him, but I'm speaking to posterity. And the next
That
time
should only be the fate of the chair.
Sorry? Okay. But the way it's written, or the way I read it, there's, in my judgment, too much privilege, too much responsibility assigned to a single person. There are commissions in other cities. We have San Francisco as an example. They can drive you crazy. They can delay a job for a year or 2 or 3. But I would argue that at the end of the day, their city has become very interesting. Okay, it's not monolithic. It's not all the same. But in my view, there's got to be some commission, some organization, under the chair's guidance, I don't care, where this is not in the sole purview of one individual.
Well, go ahead, Edith.
I want to make sure I understand your question. I think, are you concerned?
I don't know if it's a question or a dissertation.
Okay. Well, I believe that the organization that you're looking for is the commission itself. Yes, precisely. It's this, we have a history, we have a long history of special permits, discretionary review special permits, in which the commission must make findings and must make qualitative assessment about whether or not the applicant merits, what it's proposing to do.
But we also know,
60,
I'm sorry, Edith, but we also know from our past history, which by and large has been successful, that the chair had a tremendous influence in the aesthetics of the building, which was ultimately presented to the board, to the commission, and voted upon. Once again, I don't think that's the best way to go.
Well, I think that with respect to this particular application, we have seen the organization you're speaking of, and it is us. I mean, it is the commission that will ultimately make these determinations, and not with respect to allowable FAR bonuses, subject, of course, to the city council's review, and it will not be within the discretion of any one individual,
and with respect to
including and especially the chair, in this at least with respect to this particular chair.
Looking at this chair.
And with respect to the transit improvements, the MTA, as you know, is very much involved in identifying appropriate improvements, they in fact have to submit a letter of agreement to, I think it's called a concept agreement letter. It's a requirement of the application. So there are many entities involved. And of course, this special permit that we're proposing goes through ULURP, where, you know, there's a lot of say from the public, from formal ULURP parties and the broader public about, you know, what those improvements should be and what floor area bonus they merit.
Mr. Lewis?
Hi, Edith. Looking forward to Wednesday, and I'm sure it'll be very interesting. I don't know if you're prepared to comment on this yet, but you did offer some comments about accepting some of the language or proposed language from the borough president. It might be too soon to talk about some of the community board recommendations. Obviously, they vary widely. And some of them, I think, make quite a bit of sense, and others, I think, might be outside of, beyond what is before us at this moment. I don't know if you want to comment at all on any of the 6 recommendations in terms of the staff's thought at this point, or if it's too early at this point.
Do you have are there specific points you would like to
Number
raise?
5 and number 6 in particular.
Okay, number 5 is the request that LPC issue a letter of harmonious relationship. Let me just get to that page. We did consult with LPC as we were developing this special permit, and LPC asked that we keep the framework as it stands today in the Grand Central Subdistrict. So, in fact, they do participate. We do consult with them to see if they would like to make a harmonious relationship finding. In the case of 383 Madison, right, the only project that used that special permit, the LPC stated that, in fact, there was no visual, you couldn't see one building from the other. So they declined to issue a letter of harmonious relationship. They do that sometimes, and that's their purview and that's their prerogative. So in the case here, we would follow the same model. If the case, for example, the MTA site were to advance as a development site on its own without any lot merger, and it only fronts on Madison, LPC may again make this determination that they won't be issuing a letter of harmonious relationship.
How about number 6?
Oh, number 6, excuse me. Okay. Number 6, sorry, I didn't get to the right slide. Number 6 is the community board asking for a different treatment of the northern 4 blocks from the southern block. This SL Green block fronts on 42nd, and so therefore has a different, the community board and others, and just a matter of fact, has a different boundary situation. What we say is this is a discretionary special permit, and applicants in the future on the northern sites would have to apply for an FAR bonus. They would have to make the case that, whatever bonus they're going for, let's say it's a full 15 FAR, that it makes sense for those blocks, for that block rather. I think it's premature now to limit the availability, or the limit rather, of the 15 FAR. Things do change, maybe building technologies change, things may change where 30 could fit just fine on a smaller lot, or on a lot that has, 3 narrow street frontage. Again, it's all discretionary review, and we would recommend that we keep the text applicable to all 5 blocks in identical manner.
Ms. Levin, then Ms. Efron.
But this does sort of open what I think will be one of the topics that we have the hardest time grappling with. It's related also to item number 2 there, seeking guidance for what types of improvements may merit a given FAR percentage increase for affected lots. A similar comment was made by the borough president. What we're grappling with here, the commission is, in order to approve a bonus, we are required to conclude that a certain quality of things merits a certain quantity. And how you judge quantity by quality is going to be a hard thing to figure out. I think many people are going to be pushing us, and I'm going to be sympathetic to those pushes, that while preserving the flexibility and the discretion that this commission needs in each case, we need some more guidance about how to make that judgment.
Sure.
How to decide that this package is 15 and some other package is 7.
I expect we'll fully have more conversations about this. For today, I did want to highlight the language in the findings, which talks, about the kind of findings you must make, right? The quality, the high quality, the generous connections, the, comfortable walking space, et cetera, improvements to daylight, sound abatement, et cetera. There is actually a lot in the language, in the text. We've included more in this text than we have in any special permit. And we are going into like more than 30 years of use of the subway improvement bonus, which frankly has fewer standards, fewer guiding principles embedded in that language. So we're very confident, and we have faith, that this process, the discretionary review process, by the commission and by city council with input from the public, can arrive at the right conclusion for what the right amount of bonus floor area is. I understand that there will be more questions about this, and we'll keep talking about it. But at this point, we strongly advise against any sort of formula or a standardization of issuing bonus. We think that heads you towards an as-of-right framework, like a plaza bonus or another kind of bonus. So again, we think it's very important to preserve the flexibility. Again, things change, and we do not want to create language that would hamstring the commission or the public or others from making the kind of improvements we need in the future.
Yeah, but I think we're going to need to tighten it up so that we're not arbitrary.
Yeah, I would just note, furtherance of what Edith said, that we know that there are instances of special permits which require quite directive findings, where the commission frequently feels hamstrung by the limitations that the special permit requires, and in general, I appreciate what you're saying about giving, to an extent, and we've seen this in other areas, a degree of guidance not only to ourselves but to the public at large. However, to a large extent, that is why there's such a variety of perspectives among the members of the commission, which are, and all of you are here, and we're all here to not only bring our very specific expertise to bear, but to bring our best judgment to bear. And that generalized best judgment is especially in a commission of this size, frequently at play, and I'd be cautious about limiting it too much. Ms. Efron.
Thank you for a really great, brief and comprehensive report. I have a question about sequencing, and a bit based on recent experience with approving a renewal for a subway bonus in the Penn Station area. Obviously, the improvements are really important and immediately needed, otherwise they wouldn't be considered significant. And subsequent approvals would, in theory, be the same. What happens in the case of an economic downturn of a severe nature? How does the public end up benefiting from the approval of transit improvements that are made, if in fact they're not made? And assuming the MTA would pick up the slack, do we then end up with a project where the building gets to increase its FAR without the transit improvements?
No, absolutely not. The building would not be able to increase in size if it hasn't delivered on the improvements that were required as the part of the application. So that's very clear. The point you make about when the improvements come online, if there's an economic downturn, it's a real question. I think, yes, as I think you cited, there was the Penn building, 15 Penn building, yes, there was a special permit granted with the expectation that the building be built in a matter of a few years, and it's been, I think, 5 at least now. You know, that's the nature of all these special permit approvals, and you see sometimes applications, just as we did today, applicants coming back for renewals. So, you know, timing may not have been right. I don't, there's not a guarantee, you know, in the way that in these special permits that you require the special permit to be used.
Right, and really the distinction, a plaza is wonderful, but not essential. But these are by definition essential, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, we would all love to characterize them as essential, and certainly the MTA would. But as you know, they don't have their own capital monies directed toward these improvements.
Fair
they had
enough.
some money that they
Fair
put
enough.
towards some stairs, but you know, they're really focusing their money on safety and maintenance in this huge transit system. And you know, their first priority, unfortunately, has not been here, right? Because they have very pressing needs all over the system. So this really is a leveraging. This special permit and this proposal is a way to leverage the private sector
Absolutely.
to deliver, you know, amenities where the public sector, you know, may be further behind or unable to deliver.
And let me just add or underscore what Edith said. Clearly, the bonus floor area here, one of the major advantages of this approach is that the bonus floor area here cannot be occupied until the improvements are made. And that, generally speaking, is a tremendous incentive, much greater incentive, frankly, maybe sadly, but nevertheless probably true, much greater incentive on the private sector to finish and make these commitments so that they can realize the benefits of the bonus. And while it is true that there are, as Edith says, bonuses like one at Penn Station that has not yet been implemented, sadly, the capital budgets of our public investments tend to be operate similarly with economic downturns as opposed to being countercyclical, and as a consequence, the likelihood of a downturn just affecting a private sector commitment is unlikely. It would be likely to see the public sector's investments also not be realized if during periods of downturn, as we've seen. So while life is not perfect, there's a very strong incentive here when the private sector does get a benefit, and that incentive may be greater than exists on the public side. Mr. Cantor.
Your arguments are sound, Mr. Chair, but the private sector does not have control of the site. It only has control of what it's building. Historically, the other agencies want to build themselves. So you may strike a deal, and it now has to go through, the private sector is drawing their plans, which I would argue could be drawn in a year for the biggest building, while the MTA might take 2 or 3 years to develop the plans. It's got to go, I think MTA is under Wick's law, I don't know, the bidding process. The government may not be able to keep up with the private developer, and the private developer will then be caught in a real short squeeze. So, and I know on many projects, we have been able to convince the public sector, the public agency, to let our builder do the job. It was a small job. But when you get into real heavy work, I think that government is going to demand it keep its rights to running the jobs, and that creates a huge risk that the developer, who in good faith made his deal, in good faith started his construction, ends up on the 94th floor and they're first putting a shovel in the ground?
Well, again, I think Frank, when he presents One Vanderbilt, will go through this in much more detail, but one of the real advantages of the One Vanderbilt application is, Frank will, I think, attest, is that the developer will actually do most of this work, if not virtually all of this work. And that also, for all the reasons you're indicating, adds a tremendous incentive to the private developer to get this done, and as well as assuming all of the risks and that you mentioned and others that you didn't mention. So,
If the government will allow the private developer to do the build, but if they don't allow them to do the build, the developer is at the mercy of that organization.
even if the developer, the government allows the developer to do the work, the private developer is frequently at the mercy of the public entity as well. But we'll hear from Frank in a minute on that.
Well, I guess Frank will address this, but I thought it was a requirement of the special permit that the developer do the public realm improvements.
Yes.
So, I think that takes.
Got to get the agencies to sign off on that ahead of time.
Absolutely, yes.
Any other questions for
MTA has
Edith? And on the overall zoning text amendment before we go into the SL Green private application? Ms. Ortiz, oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Reade.
You know, one issue that came up earlier, and you mentioned this in terms of, the MTA didn't necessarily have the funds to complete some of these improvements, and I think that could be said for, capital investments throughout the system. What is it, the special bonus requires that the improvements be located within the area or in immediate proximity of the development. And in asking this question internally, that, it was how can we ensure that the MTA maybe is thinking about, the savings that they make here, perhaps allow for improvements in other places? I mean, how can we ensure that the communities that benefit from having the highest land values aren't the only ones that receive the benefit of improvements in transit infrastructure?
I think the MTA would be very quick to say that improvements here help the entire line. And more than just the 4, 5, 6, they would help, there's so many connections to the 4, 5, 6, so they really help an extensive part of the city. The Grand Central Terminal is the bottleneck for the Lex line, and if the MTA could free up platform space, could get passengers up the stairs faster and safely, they would be able to run more trains through this system. So they would be able to run more trains, not just on Lex line, but then also with connections. So that's one response. The other response is the MTA is looking very, I would say, ambitiously and looking ambitiously across the city for partners and value capture. And we're working with them on some other initiatives that are not in the central business districts. There are efforts underway, and this improvement in particular for the Grand Central Subway Station, again, will help far beyond just East Midtown.
Yeah, I mean, presumably those improvements will be made through these bonuses, and at some point, there are other needs throughout the system that are perhaps more pressing than additional improvements.
Those
at this
pressing needs are
location.
where MTA is allocating their funds. So it just takes pressure off of the MTA to allocate funds to areas that, may have better value capture opportunities, right? I mean, where you can really leverage the private sector is in areas just like this. So a program like this really helps MTA in underserved areas.
And I would just add, in addition to what Edith says about this being an extremely high priority for the MTA and for the system as a whole, given that it's a high priority, if this value capture opportunity was not available, the MTA would probably have to invest funds here and consequently not have funds for some other areas that would be, where value capture is not available. And this does free up money that MTA public investments that can go into those areas. And then I'd also say that, you know, we view value capture as a two-way street in some respects. It's not only the city and the private sector's ability to provide value capture to the MTA, and but also public investments by the MTA or the Port Authority or other non-city capital agencies can provide value capture that aids in what the city wants to do in other neighborhoods. And we've identified several such opportunities to the MTA, and hopefully that the funds will be there. So it's a two-way street, even in terms of value capture. It's not just from the MTA's ability to capture the value. It's also, I think, part of the city's ability to capture value that the other capital investment agencies make. Mr. Reade.
Edith, hi. So not to get too much into the weeds here, but in regards to the public improvements that the developer will be making, will the MTA in this case, or DOT, or whomever the applicable agency is, be able to review the plan? I mean, obviously there's a scope of work that's presented and that's agreed to, but in terms of the actual plans, will they actually get to review those plans to ensure that the work is done at the highest standards, and that quote-unquote shortcuts aren't made as it relates to ongoing maintenance and the viability of those improvements?
Absolutely, yes. There will be separate agreements between the developer and the MTA to ensure that all the improvements are being, all the improvements will meet the MTA standards.
And the ongoing maintenance of those, I know it was discussed earlier or mentioned earlier, I didn't recall the response. Who will be responsible for maintaining like public places and stuff like that after they're built?
They're different
Right.
public places. So, and actually, this speaks to
Well,
actually
okay.
Frank's
Okay, so
presentation.
we'll deal with
why don't
that
we cover
particular.
that?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for Edith? Thanks, Edith.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I just want to on some of the things that got raised before. On the timing issue, I think one of the things that's different about this project as opposed to 15 Penn, for example, is this proposal has an anchor tenant that was signed at the time when we certified. So arguably there's a kind of difference where at 15 Penn it was effectively a spec building that would find a tenant at some later point. So there's a difference there.
It's very helpful, thank you.
And then on LPC, in this case, for their looking at the harmonious relationship, they also looked at the harmonious relationship of the One Vanderbilt project with Grand Central Terminal. It was a kind of non-binding thing. It wasn't required, but they did it for this site anyway. So I think in their materials speak to that point. So it's kind of worth noting. Okay. Okay, good. So I'm going to speak about One Vanderbilt. We'll try to go through this quickly. The last presentation took a really long time. We're trying to get you out of here at a decent hour. Generally, just to go over what we're going to talk about is the just overall description of the proposal, the actions necessary to facilitate the project, then look at an A application that was filed by the applicant in response to community comments as part of the public review process, and then to look at the public review comments that so far have been received. First, here's the One Vanderbilt site at the corner of 42nd and Vanderbilt, directly adjacent to Grand Central Terminal. Green 317 Madison, LLC, aka SL Green, is applying for 3 special permits to facilitate the One Vanderbilt project. The first is the transfer of development rights from the landmark Bowery Savings Bank through the modified landmark transfer provision that Edith spoke about. That's approximately 2.63 FAR. 2, an increase in the maximum floor area ratio through the Grand Central Public Realm Improvement Bonus under our new Public Realm Improvement Bonus special permit for approximately 12.37 FAR. And then finally, pursuant to that bonus special permit, modification of mandatory district plan elements and a series of other existing special controls in the special Midtown district. So here's the 317 Madison site today. It's made up of 4 effectively mid-rise buildings directly adjacent to the terminal. We went through this last time, but just wanted to show 2 things. One, typically we talk about sites in relation to their surroundings above grade. Given this site's relationship to the below grade, this site has very kind of specific special relationships below. So here you can see the 4 buildings that make up the block today, adjacent to the terminal, separated by Vanderbilt Avenue. But below grade, the block, and you can see through the red outline, is actually connected to the below grade network of Grand Central. This is the kind of main level of Grand Central Terminal, main hall. This is their space at the same level through the terminal, or on the 1 Vanderbilt block itself. In addition, there's a series of subway entrances that come from the Lex line, the 4, 5, 6, and 7 Flushing line that exists at 42nd Street. Additionally, this site plays an important role on the still constructing East Side Access project. This is the project that brings Long Island to the east side with the 1-seat ride, really for the first time. And while there are a series of entrances proposed at 47th, 45th, and at 43rd Street, there are no current entrances proposed for the site for 42nd Street. And the 1 Vanderbilt site offers the opportunity to do that. So general proposal, A, the building would be the maximum as proposed to be permitted 30 FAR. That translates into just under 1.3 million zoning square feet. The building will be 1,401 feet tall and be 68 stories in it. In total, it's predominantly office use with some retail on the lower levels, as well as amenity space, including an observation deck up at the top of the building. The building is meant to be integrated into its surroundings by actually moving away from the 42nd Street frontage to allow greater views of Grand Central Terminal from Madison Avenue, and looking to be material in kind of harmony with the surroundings of the surrounding buildings. The proposal includes a number of improvements, both on-site and off-site, and I'll try to go through them specifically, and we'll talk about things about who's doing what and where. On-site transit improvements, a series of them on the lot of the 1 Vanderbilt site itself. There's additionally on-site public space. There's then off-site transit improvements in the Lex line at Grand Central Terminal, which is really a block away. And then finally, off-site public space, which is right in front of the building between Grand Central and along Vanderbilt Avenue. So first, looking at the on-site transit improvements, this is actually looking at the level of East Side Access, the East Side Access concourse. What the proposal would include is access from East Side Access, starting to rise up through the site, which connects at the terminal hall level, and then further goes up to 42nd Street. And so this allows for an entrance to East Side Access at 42nd Street, which is kind of then the southernmost access to East Side Access itself. Additionally, this connection at the B2 level allows connectivity between Metro North system and the subway system through the site, the 1 Vanderbilt site, and it also then allows for the connections for East Side Access, which allows for this really to be a connection between all 3 of these transit systems. And it also, at the location of this transit hall, allows those to really kind of interact with the street level through a new at-grade public space. And so this is another of the improvements that would be created as part of the proposal. That would, and this is the transit hall here, it would from 43rd Street have access down to the whole transit network of Grand Central Terminal. Through that connection, allow access up to 42nd Street, and then down through the stairs actually get to the East Side Access Terminal, which is further below Grand Central. Then moving east, so this is the 1 Vanderbilt site. Here's the Lexington line subway station as it moves from Park to Lexington. We've talked in the past about all of the issues the station faces, predominantly getting people from the platform levels up to street level. So the proposal includes a number of improvements to the station. Number one, it includes 2 new stairs on the north end, one on the northbound and one on the southbound platform, a third new stair down from the platform level up from the southbound side. It also includes reconfigurations of all the existing stairs to actually allow more platform space at platform level. At what is the mezzanine level, this is generally the orange area that people know in the station. There's the new stairs, there's the reconfigured stairs here, but there's additionally a series of improvements, including additional mezzanine space on the north end, cleared out mezzanine space in the middle of the mezzanine, which allows greater connectivity between its portions, as well as connections further to street level here, and I'll show them at street. So there'd be an improved entrance at what today is called the Strawberry Stair. And this would be improved, so this would allow greater access from the north side of the corner of 42nd and Lex, and for the first time actually allow subway access from the south side of 42nd on the east side of Lex. And so for anyone kind of going further east, this actually becomes a very useful stair, so you don't have to cross Lexington Avenue to get to the subway. Finally, the proposal includes, as Edith talked previously about the public place mapping action, the proposal will include for the improvement of this space into the public plaza itself. So in summary, again, the on-site transit improvements, the on-site public space, the off-site transit improvements at the Lex line, and then the off-site public space at Vanderbilt Avenue. The proposal includes a number of other features, and I just wanted to go through them, and they're useful for some of the other things we'll talk about. This is the general ground floor plan of the building as proposed. Number one, here's the transit hall in the northeast corner. Retail, I guess moving west along 43rd. The loading docks would be to the left of that. Then along Madison, predominantly retail frontage with a main access, one of the main accesses to the actual office building itself. Then here along 42nd Street, you can see the building actually angling away from 42nd Street to allow the view of the terminal. And there's then a series of access points here down to the subway, down to the observation deck, and then up to retail. Then along Vanderbilt Avenue, there's the proposal for effectively the main lobby to the office building, and then again, we're left at the corner with the transit hall. Generally, this is the building in its context. It is a tall building, but is intended to be designed in a way that actually tries to work with its context in a number of ways. One, on the lower levels, really trying to reference the scale of Grand Central Terminal and really deferring in its angles and overall scale to the terminal. But then in general, actually kind of tapering as a tower, similar to other typical New York skyscrapers throughout the city's history. Along Madison, the proposal includes a high street wall with the intention of actually reflecting the high street wall context that's actually found on Madison there today. There are sustainability goals included as part of the proposal, is designed to achieve LEED Gold certification, and building design includes a number of energy efficient features, including glazing, high efficiency HVAC systems, and a number of other things that I'll keep going through. So actions necessary to facilitate the proposal. First, we'll start with the landmark transfer. This is the transfer from the Bowery Savings Bank, shown here, to the One Vanderbilt site for the just about 2.7 FAR. There's a requirement for a program for continuing maintenance of the Bowery Bank. That's been established already with LPC, and there are no modifications to bulk sought pursuant to that landmark transfer. In addition, so now we're talking about the new public realm improvement bonus, and this perhaps is to some of the points you were raising, Erwin. The application includes specific drawings which describe the improvements in detail, all of the various improvements, and they're all included in the application, so similar to other subway improvement bonuses that we've seen in the past.
On-site or both?
In both. Both are featured in the special permit drawings. The special permit also controls, as Edith described, it has requirements and findings particular to the ground floor, but also to the building's general massing and overall shape. So the special permit drawings control the ground floor and the location of things on it. and it also controls the overall building massing, and also the actual uses that would be permitted in the proposed building. So all of that's included in the special permit drawings and overall proposal. Edith went through these findings, but I just wanted to put them up again. So the CPC has to make findings for the public realm improvement bonus, for each of the different types of improvements. So talking about below grade improvements, above grade on-site improvements, above grade off-site improvements, as well as specific findings for the design of the ground floor level, the overall building massing, sustainability features in the building, and then the overall final findings that are intended to kind of tie all of those various elements up, with the overall idea that the public benefit derived from the proposed above improvements merits the additional amount of floor area being granted or proposed. Second, this is the second special permit, or third, actually, special permit, and this is in conjunction with the public realm improvement bonus. The commission may permit modifications to a variety of special controls in the special Midtown district, and a series of modifications are requested to the mandatory district plan elements, effectively the urban design controls of the special Midtown district, things like retail continuity and street wall continuity. There's also requests for modifications to height and setback controls, building entrance requirements, and curb cuts. I'll go through these quickly. On 42nd Street, there are requirements for retail continuity, and the requirements are that the retail be located on the street line. That's the general intent of 42nd Street. Because the building actually angles away, that requirement can't be met. And so there's a requirement, there's a request to modify that to actually allow the building to be designed as proposed, or to be developed as proposed. Additionally, some of the spaces for access to the observation deck, generally it's unclear whether those are uses considered retail. In the zoning resolution, it's not a use that's described, and so as a way to be safe, the permit requests modifications of that to allow the use to be developed on that frontage. On Madison Avenue, their retail is predominantly proposed, but the width of the overall lobby, as well as required emergency stairs, doesn't comply with the maximum dimensions for those along the Madison frontage, and so to be able to develop them, they're looking for modification of that requirement there. Street wall continuity, there's a number of street wall rules in Midtown, generally speaking about the minimum and maximum heights of street walls. Given the complexity of the overall design, this building really doesn't comply with those regulations, as well as there's a series of street wall regulations about where the street wall specifically has to be. Given the overall intent to actually have this really varied kind of facade with these cutbacks and bump outs, there needed to be modification to those, and the special permit drawings control what could be developed pursuant to those modifications. There's a series of pedestrian circulation space requirements. They are intended to so that each building, when constructed in Midtown, provides pedestrian space at grade. There's a series of types that are permitted, and each of them has their own specific rules. The building meets the overall requirement for the area of pedestrian circulation space, but some of the specifics of the actual design of the requirements for the types need to be modified. One of the ones that I think is an interesting one is 42nd Street, the sidewalk widening, which is included because at some point it actually doesn't meet the minimum width, which is included in the text. The entire space couldn't count, and so this is something that allows for this space, which does create a greater amount of pedestrian space on the site to actually be counted. Again, building, and one of the other requirements is for height and setback controls, which are unique to Midtown. The building does not comply with them, and so the proposal requests modifications to allow for the development of the building. And then finally, there are building entrance requirements that are special both to Midtown as well as the Grand Central Subdistrict. This requests modifications pursuant to them, really dealing with permitting an allowance for the entrance along Madison Avenue, and really dealing with the fact that because there are so many main street frontages here, kind of large, wide street frontages, this is really the only area where loading could go, and typically this is an area where an entrance would have been required. Right? So there's some kind of overall, the design can't work with the requirements as they are put in the text today. Again, there are findings specific to these modifications, generally talking about that the modifications result in a better site plan for the proposed development, and second, that the modifications to height and setback control result in an improved distribution of bulk and are harmonious with the overall height and setback goals of the special Midtown District. So now let's talk about the A application. So during the public review process, in response to comments that the applicant received as part of the public review process, the applicant proposed a modification that required a series, effectively an additional waiver than what was originally proposed on the ground floor. So this is the original application site plan, and this is specifically talking about this southeast corner. So in yellow, here's the subway access, which goes down to below grade. There was then access to the observation deck in this purple color, and then there was additional access to retail up through a series of escalators at this corner. As a way of actually, let's call it clearing out some of the variety of uses that were proposed here, the applicant proposed to move the access to the observation deck to the corner of 43rd and Madison, and freeing up that space to actually be a little bit clearer so you don't have three uses right at that corner. This retail amenity space, and this speaks to something I said before, because observation decks are not a use that's described in the zoning resolution, would not have met it's arguable it did not meet the definition of retail continuity. And so where the original application only had an issue with effectively the lobby and emergency access stairs meeting the width requirements, the space devoted to the entrance to the observation deck, if not considered retail, this would require that to also obtain an additional waiver. And so that was needed in A application. That was an additional waiver than what was originally included in the application. So that was filed by the applicant, not last week, but the week before. So public review for the One Vanderbilt project. Number one, community board review. Both community board 5 and 6 recommended disapproval with conditions. They were the same conditions, so just listed them once. A, that the development be LEED's version 4 certified platinum. And then 2, that a major public space is created at street and concourse level, effectively through and adjacent to the Vanderbilt lobby, connecting the corner of Madison Avenue and 42nd Street and the main concourse of Grand Central Terminal. Next, the borough board recommended disapproval with the condition, and this is the same condition that was actually included in the Vanderbilt corridor recommendation. So it's the same, but generally reaching consensus on the series of issues that Edith described previously. And then speaking about the borough president's recommendation, here it was approval with conditions subject to a series of conditions. One, that SL Green honor its stated commitments as described in a letter provided to the borough president by the applicant, looking at a series of things. A, consolidation and reduction of retail frontage at Vanderbilt and East 42nd Street. B, providing for ongoing maintenance of the Vanderbilt public place. C, construction of an ADA compliant unisex restroom beneath the transit hall. D, work with the department, the community boards, and the borough president to finalize the interior design of the transit hall and make sure that that is either completed by the time of the end of the public review process or has a future public process associated with it. E, install an entrance from the retail space at 42nd and Vanderbilt onto the public plaza, as well as an entrance from the transit hall to the One Vanderbilt lobby, actually providing entrance between them. And I think that's something that actually came up as part of our certification. F, continue to improve the overall energy efficiency of the building as technology improves. G, use every effort to preserve the decorative facade of 15 East 42nd Street. And then finally, and I realized H actually dropped off the page, but there was that the 43rd Street frontage, effectively where the loading dock entrance is, that the design of that actually be kind of in keeping with the overall design of the building and the overall surroundings. And then finally, 2, that the City Planning Commission, in exercising its discretionary approval, approve plans memorializing all the key entrances and the spaces connecting the various features of the building as part of the special permit drawings. So those aren't changed and kind of lost over time. Again, just the general description of the building, the various actions that are being proposed here. So that's it for here.
Thank you, Frank.
We cut it down by half.
I know.
I
know. A lot to cover. Questions for Frank? Ms. Delhousse.
This is a relatively minor one, considering the long list of things that are there. Can you remind us who takes care of the ongoing maintenance of the transit hall?
The transit hall, as stated in the letter S.L. Green provided to the borough president, would be by the applicant, by the owner of the building.
Mr. Knuckles.
I was just curious, is the current site vacant, or must that be vacated before, and assuming there's a favorable disposition?
I believe, and the applicants can speak to this more, but I believe they're currently, leases take a long time to empty out, and I believe they're currently vacating the building.
Ms. Levin.
I'll limit this to one topic, but there are a whole lot. But that was a great presentation and very nicely distilled, and thanks for that. Obviously, you've been on this roadshow for a while.
Yes, in fact.
Yeah.
He knows it in his sleep. If he doesn't.
That's probably dangerous.
Yes.
The public plaza. The way it's set up is we're really deferring any design questions to a subsequent process, which I think Edith said would start in best case 2017. Nonetheless, that plaza is one of the bonusable features here. So one thing I'm going to be interested in getting a handle on through the hearing and our follow-up discussions is what we can do now to pin down the key elements of that design. I mean, it seems to me there is an open question about whether, what the whole purpose of this public place is. Is it, you know, a passive place for some respite in the middle of the big city, or is it supposed to be, you know, a grand public entrance to a busy terminal? Is it therefore supposed to accommodate a lot of people coming and going? How does it relate to the driveway space in Grand Central Terminal, which was a taxi driveway and has now been closed, but it's immediately adjacent to this, so as we think about planning it, maybe that needs to be included. I get that this will be part of a review process, planning and review process by DOT. There are ample commitments in here that that's going to include the public, but I think for the commission to let it go and agree that it's part of the bonusable features here, I would like to see a few key elements of the design identified so we know what it is.
Frank, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I think A, those are a great series of questions for the applicant to respond to tomorrow. They're here. So, so I think that's kind of part one. I'll let Carl say whatever you're going to say and see if there's anything.
Well, I was just going to say, I do think that, at least with respect to the prospective functioning of this very important site, and to what extent the city more generally is going to be involved, and to some extent staff here on the DOT process. I think those are very good questions, and I think that we should be able to respond to those before our final vote. I don't know if Edith or Frank have
I was just going
something to add to that.
echo what Carl said, but just to let you know that we anticipate your question, not just from you, but from others. So we actually have been, we've started to talk to DOT about some, perhaps some guiding principles. They're very open to us, the department, having an amplified role or having a role as part of their design process, which is established. They have a very nice framework for doing design with communities and local stakeholders. So we will have a role in that. a lot of details still to be figured out, but DOT shares our goal and the developer's goal in making sure that this space is an extremely high-quality space. It's ambitious in its, design and really quality and sense of permanence. They also, the maintenance is not on DOT, not on DOT. So that helps aspire. Right. Thank you.
Mr. Cantor, and
Frank, can you go back to that slide showing the plaza?
Public place.
Yeah. I don't know whether there are any requirements, legal requirements with regard to shadow studies, but clearly that plaza is going to be in shade almost 100% of the time. The only time it's not going to be is when the sun's due south.
I would, maybe another way.
I don't know if that's a requirement at all with regard to approval.
Just a series of things. A, this is also the roof of Grand Central Terminal, so trees and planting really can't be developed here at all. You'd be puncturing the roof, be seeing the root ball.
Because you wouldn't want to anyhow.
And then second, I think the EIS actually looked at this, which was looking at looked at this space and saw that even given the existing, regardless of this proposal, that this doesn't cause additional shadows on this space. So that effectively the existing conditions already are
Right.
an existing building.
The existing conditions are going to remain.
Sorry?
Basically, the existing conditions with regard to shadows will remain.
That's correct. But I think and to be fair, this is an area with a lot of tall buildings. There are a number of spaces.
Can't do anything about it. I just want to know if there are requirements, because I suspect that somewhere along the line there are going to be various groups who save 43rd Street in the corner, save East End Ave, you save this, you get that every time.
Mr. Knuckles.
No, I was just wondering, around process in terms of the plaza, who has primacy? I mean, it's DOT, but the plaza is very much an appendage of the building, and the developer has to build it and maintain it. So who's ultimately on first?
I think of this as whenever, well, I would almost put it this way. Whenever DOT has a space in the plaza program, they have a partner who's doing that they work with. I would say this is a condition where SL Green is one of the partners. I would think that Grand Central Terminal would be the other, at least, right? So I think from the condition. Right. Well, both as a neighbor, having Grand Central Terminal would be an interested party. And then the Grand Central bid would actually be who is in this area already today. And this is a process that they've done in other
There's a lot of
spaces.
cooks in that soup.
It's worked for them to date. Right? And I think one of the reasons they wanted this space to go through that is, A, at the end of the day, it's their space. Right? The city will own and control this still. And they wanted to go through the process that they have their other spaces go through. And then finally, at the end of that process,
The city will own it, but the developer must maintain it, right?
that's correct. And
Okay.
typical when, through the Plaza program, DOT requires a maintenance partner to actually do it. They don't do the work, the specifics of it themselves. They have someone on, let's call it on site. So whether that be a bid, an adjacent property owner, I'm trying to think of other examples, but this is typical.
I think we all, to all of your points about this, we all recognize this is a really important public place. And we all have a stake, city planning, but more broadly, the general public really has a big stake in this functioning well and being designed in a way that all of us are extremely proud of.
And I think just one last thing on this. I mean, at the letter that you all received from DOT regarding the space, right? So at the beginning of this process, just like with the transit improvements and the MTA had to provide effectively conceptual approval, DOT had to do the same thing here, and they listed a number of kind of issues or considerations for this space. So talking about things like allowing or requiring maintaining emergency access, kind of having the space function for the pedestrian volumes that exist here. There were a number of things that were in that actually I think are at least the starting point to get to some of those conversations about the specific characteristics.
Ms. Levin, and then Ms. Efron.
Yeah,
And
just a
then-
quick clarification, Frank, to something I think you believe you said that SL Green would be responsible for maintaining the plaza, but I noticed that in the letter that SL Green gave the borough president, it says, "We commit to reach an agreement with Grand Central Partnership to undertake the long-term maintenance of Vanderbilt Plaza."
I
So,
guess what I would say is that an agreement has to be made by the applicant to either be SL Green or the bid
Okay, so
to do it. And I think just as that was true from the beginning, which is that I think the bid maintains a number of spaces. They're maintaining the space just to the south at Pershing, so they have it's called the general expertise to do this, so they may be the right person.
okay, so it's the developer's responsibility to get it done, and it looks like they intend to contract with the bid to do it? Is that,
I think
is that the deal?
it's a great question to get more specifics from them on this, but I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
But just to your point, residually, it's ultimately their responsibility.
Yeah.
And toward that, that's in perpetuity, even if SL Green sells the building, I assume,
it's-
unlike other
Runs with the
obligations. Great, okay. I've been sitting here trying to think of any other private building that has a plaza that runs its length only in front of it. I can only come up with culturals, but I'm sure you have some experience. It's exciting to think about how it would be different. But really, I just had an ongoing question about the waiting room, which is replacing the 12,000 square feet in Vanderbilt Hall, at least by how the application was defined. Is there any, will there be any obligation of SL Green or the landlord of the building to have some sort of standard in evening hours, which are a different need for passengers waiting for safety reasons, to maintain the lobby? I mean, I think we can safely assume that if it's a Class A office building, there will be lights on and all that, but if that's the primary entrance in and exit out, it should be someplace that's comfortable for women alone in all hours.
Okay, yes. I guess, so one of the things the special permit allows and kind of talks about is hours of access, the hours of operation for the various public spaces.
Right, but they shouldn't be different at night versus day, if in fact that's a public amenity.
You mean the character of the space? I see what you're saying, okay. That seems very sensible. We should ask the applicant that response.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I probably blurted out something that I shouldn't. Would you ask a question about what private building has
I was just
space
thinking,
in front of it?
I was just trying to come up with some as a sort of parallel, but I couldn't think of
Oh,
any.
that the city owns, excuse me, that has a public space that the city owns in front of it. Okay, well, that's not Zuccotti Park because that space is
Privately
owned
owned.
by private property and owned by the private property. I'll try to come up with some other examples for you.
Well, you know, actually, one that is a little peculiar is the space in front of the stock exchange. It's the closest example I can come up with,
Well, actually, just,
which is not.
Not a private building. Well, I
Not
guess
what?
it's sort of a private building.
and
It's a private building with public space, but that public space is largely a security zone, so.
and then actually, right, so at Pershing Square, city owns the space, private building is, it's only the one portion of the Park Avenue viaduct space, and a old Philip Morris building is the only building that fronts on it. So that's, again, it's a city-owned space.
Ms. Deleuze.
Frank, I'm just recalling that there was a process back in 2013 that tried to identify some of the principles specifically for Vanderbilt. I don't.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it lends itself, given the pedestrian activity that's in the area and given the constructability issues that it is the roof, there are only a kind of limited number of moves that one could really make in the space, and actually, and it's kind of requirements for emergency access. So those things kind of, and I think that's the point I was trying to make about the latter, which is that I think they reflect those again, that they
Okay.
really are the start of the bones, I think, for the design of the space.
So the other question I had, not related specifically to Vanderbilt, was whether or not on Wednesday we should expect to hear testimony specific to the DEIS. And
They'll, representatives from SL Green and their team will be there to speak on the DEIS if there are questions that come up. I guess perhaps it would be useful to know for the applicant team, are there specific questions that you would?
well, I mean, obviously,
come up?
I think it really speaks to the pedestrian elements. I guess there's 9 different areas that during peak times of day that are impacted, and what recommendations they might have relative to those.
Or for mitigations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Ortiz?
This is unrelated to much of what we've been talking about, but one quick question. So the architect is Cohen Pedersen Fox. I was looking through this, and I'm aware of a building that they designed. I guess it's Baruch College that in the winter and actually right now has been cordoned off with yellow tape because icicles are falling from the building, and it just struck me that this is going to have an overhang, and I just wondered if there was some consideration or.
Given the weather outside, that's a very fair question. The architect and their team will be there tomorrow.
Okay.
Or
Yeah, I
sorry,
wanted to
Wednesday.
ask that. So.
Mr. Cantor?
Just one comment, please, Larissa. The architects always take all the credit, but in this case, they're not responsible for all the negatives.
Any other questions for Frank? Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Edith. I think there's going to be a very interesting and lively hearing on Wednesday. And with that, Jackie?
Future votes.
Anything else?
Future votes go very quickly. Staff have prepared favorable reports for the following: Library Lane, City Map Amendment, 7 West 21st Street Special Permits, 110 East 70th Street Special Permit, thank you, 498 Broome Street Special Permit, 443 Greenwich Street Parking Authorization, Bar Road City Map Amendment, Central Ridgewood Historic District, Hamilton's Patio, Zoning Map Change, Chester Court Historic District, 5402 Fort Hamilton Parkway, Zoning Map Change, 130 Nevada Avenue, certification, 32 Heenan Avenue, which is also certification, South Richmond Special District, and 38 Ridge Avenue, certification for restoration plan and special natural area district. A couple of weeks, on February the 18th, we have 6033 Huxley Avenue, authorization to facilitate a 2-family home in Riverdale, Bronx. We also have 505, 515 West 43rd Street. Commissioners, you received in your package a letter from the applicant responding to the concerns that were raised at the public hearing. I think the only concern there may be is respect to the community board recommendation to modify the height of the proposed building. So we need to know what the commission thinks about that particular recommendation for the community board.
Ms. Levin?
Well, I have some think, but I'm kind of interested in what everyone else thinks. I came into the hearing totally unpersuaded that a 10-foot reduction in the height of this building would make any difference at all, and it looked like the number of affordable units was being dramatically reduced. And then sort of Jay Siegel put a clarifying point on it at the end where he got up and gave us the chart, and indeed the chart was in our package. On the does 10 feet make a difference, I think I ended up being persuaded in particular by Joe Restucci's testimony, reminding us of the development pressures that this neighborhood is facing and the enthusiasm with which prospective purchasers of land want to press the community board, and I assume also the Department of City Planning, into granting waivers here and waivers there and waivers all over the place, and how this is really a transition zone, and how the 11th Avenue rezoning was carefully negotiated and crafted. I was on the other team at that point, so I know how painful those negotiations were. And so, all in all, I am persuaded that the community boards has very good reasons for recommending the 10-foot height reduction. The developer seems prepared to go along with it, and so I'd be prepared to go along with it too. If you run the numbers, calculating the amount of affordable housing that would have to be produced, so that reduces the overall floor area in the building to 7.4, so it's a smaller number of smaller amount of square feet devoted to market rate and devoted to affordable units. The community board has made an agreement with the developer to locate one-third of the affordable units, one-third of the affordable square footage on-site and two-thirds off-site. I think there's a problem with this building in that it will have so few affordable units. I think that leads to an imbalance within the building and, not really a fully inclusionary process. I see that the developer is now suggesting that they could, within the same number of square feet that they are allocating to the on-site affordable, that they could expand that from 6 units to 8, presumably by making smaller units. That makes sense. I don't know if we're in a position of renegotiating what the community negotiated, but if I were at that table, I would be pushing for a little bit more than the one-third of the affordable on-site so that you could get more units on-site. And I think we'd also should look really hard at the layouts and calculations. I think it's possible that within the roughly 7,500 square feet of affordable that they're proposing on-site, you might be even able to get more than 8 units. But so the more units we can get on-site, the better. But I guess I'm on board with the basic shape of the compromise that the developer and the community board have worked out. I would still like to see more affordable in the building.
Ms. Deluz?
So I think Commissioner Levin said that very well, and I agree with everything she said. I also walked into the hearing very perplexed about, why the trade-off was one that people were comfortable with, but understand. I think I too share the concern about the balance of on-site versus off-site, especially since the city is still trying to find the right balance of how to maintain permanent affordability off-site, and how that's easier to do when the units are on-site. I would say, though, it may come to this anyway, that they may be limited by what they can purchase off-site depending on what's available at the time they develop the property. So it may be helpful to have flexibility in the language that prefers one-third or more minimally, establish the one-third as the minimum and then give them more flexibility because of what the market might be for inclusionary certificates.
Other thoughts on this?
I'll weigh in here. I think Joe and Jay are very good advocates for the position. I too was perplexed when we began this process, and even having heard and better understanding the rationale for the compromise, I probably would be willing to go back to the original proposal of the developer and take, basically all of the affordable on-site with a slightly larger building and really make the case that this project has very unique characteristics that, might allow us to allow the 10 feet or the height penetration, but to make it clear that only under these very unique circumstances are we considering this and would not under other circumstances. But But obviously, you know, I wasn't there for those battles and didn't participate and don't have the scars, so I respect the opinions of others.
Ms. Ortiz?
Just quickly, my recollection is we were corrected in the 10 feet. It was 10 feet on one side and 20 feet on another. Correct, okay.
And it's also worth remembering that the 10 feet, they're still getting a waiver. They're still getting a height waiver. It's just they're getting less of a height waiver. So I think what the community board was concerned about is the degree of the height waiver. And I buy that one. And, I would also note that this was originally, as certified, this was a rental project with way more smaller units. I mean, we're seeing the reflection of this hot real estate market where it is it's financially advantageous for a developer to convert a rental to a condo. We've got the same conversation here as the issues that were raised on 23rd Street, which is going from a whole bunch of units to smaller, bigger units. And it's a trend that, if we're in the business of providing housing for a whole range of New Yorkers, it's a very difficult and unfortunate trend. I would love to tell them build as certified, but this owner's not going to do that, so.
Well, I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I understood correctly, maybe I misunderstood the discussion, but I thought they would build, it's certified, so they would build condos. It would be a bigger building than what we're currently occupying.
Yeah, but fewer units.
Right, fewer units,
Yeah,
right, no,
yeah.
but the same buildings, though.
I think it's a very interesting discussion, and, as we face this tremendous, not just affordable housing crisis, we face a housing crisis in the city, and we don't have enough housing for the people who are here, for people who can afford it, the people who are coming, and the people whose families are growing here. I mean, and not even, that doesn't even account for the 60,000 people or so in homeless shelters. So it's an enormous crisis, and it is fueled to some extent by the very heavy thumb on the scale for market rate home ownership as opposed to rental housing, and I think that is a real problem that the city faces, and it also is. So that's a factor here. It's a factor on 23rd Street, sure. There's also, I think, have to recognize the wariness of communities about density, and the fact is that the city is becoming denser. And, this, if the city is to continue to grow, and growth is a good thing, then we're going to have to learn how to address the issues of density. So I appreciate the compromise that the community board and the developer have proposed here. And the community board and the developer are certainly very, very shrewd and savvy. And I think we always face this issue of to what extent we embrace what a community wants, and to some extent, how do we recognize the citywide interest? And that's the issue that we face.
Carl, this is a community board that has absorbed enormous density. Look at the what is it, an R9 across the street at the Gotham West, which was has 600 units of permanently affordable housing and a whole lot of market rate housing. I mean, this community board has not shied from density. So when they show up and have a very fine-grained concern about a particular site that has been negotiated back, been the subject of negotiations back and forth, was a subject, implicit commitment by the city about what the density on that site would be in a fairly recent rezoning. It's hard to turn your back on that rationale, because you have to live by the deals that this agency, that the commission and the agency cuts with communities.
Any other comments on that or anything else?
I just
That's
want
your fancy.
to, I just want to commend HBD in that particular hearing
Yes,
for
I do
being way
wanna-
above and beyond,
I
and
do
it
wanna
should be
say, and
recognized
I
how much
have,
they were appreciated.
I have personally thanked Commissioner Bean and Louise, actually, who made a really, she was really made a particularly good presentation spontaneously, basically. And so,
But knowledgeable and thoughtful, and we haven't
Right.
heard that out of HB.
it was,
And
well, I think she really did an amazing job, and I think all of us were really educated by that. And just let me say, as we struggle here with the issues of mandatory inclusionary zoning and off-site, on-site factors, preservation versus new construction, it's very, very difficult to balance all of these, and it's rare that you see a split situation with some on-site, some off-site, what the trade-offs are of each, and I think Louise not only educated us on 43rd Street, but more generally, so
Definitely.
it was really good. And we did thank her, because it was great.
Thank you for your guidance on this project, Commissioners. We also have Beatrice Lewis Senior Center, Addie Mae Collins Daycare Center, Corona Senior Residence, and Melrose Commons North. Staff will be preparing a favorable report for those for the 18th.
Just a reminder, everybody take the votes, we're not going back here on Wednesday.
Yeah, so
Unless they were coming back at
we're all
7:30 in the
creatures
morning.
of habit. 9 o'clock on Wednesday at the Museum of the American Indian.
Shall I bring my supper?
I don't, it's gonna be a lively hearing. It probably, those of you who went through this 2 years ago, or now a year and a half ago, I don't anticipate it's quite gonna be that many people. It'll be a lot. But,
Yeah.
That means you guys have done a lot of good work.
Look at Edith and Frank. They've done an amazing job.
Great presentations today.
No
Really
promises.
great presentations. Outstanding.